Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. Do-do-do. 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 All right, Rockfin, you're singing twice. Let's go.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome back, guys. Happy Thursday and welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. How is it? How you be? How you been? We have quite a show for you guys tonight since I will not be live tomorrow evening on Friday. I do have a mutual aid event this weekend coming up, and there's a couple of things I have to get done before that event. So I won't be live tomorrow, but we do have a big show tonight, and there'll be plenty of clips for you to watch, of course. We're going to go ahead and show that thumbnail. Shout out patrons, and Scott Ritter will be here in just a sec. So let's go ahead and go to the thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen. Oh man, what a show tonight. What a show. We actually have even more stories, but tonight's theme is it's all coming out. And I think you'll be able to understand that when you hear the stories that we're going to discuss. Tonight, we are discussing the first one. Briahna Joy Gray debates Piers Morgan, and I've been waiting for this. You guys know that Bri is a great debater, and I don't think they were ready. I don't think the panel was ready for what Bri was going to bring to the table there. So we're going to discuss that. That was pretty interesting. We're also going to get into, I'm not sure if everyone heard about, like, there's something going on at TYT. Apparently, they are making a pivot. They're known as the TYT home of progressives, but they are deciding to, I guess, go in a different direction. And this is a breaking story here. A TYT contributor quits. And I don't know if everybody heard about this, but I do want to talk about that and the reasons for that contributor choosing to leave TYT. And it has to do with the direction that they are going in. We're also going to discuss Kamala's Black staffers speak out. And this is not good for Kamala Harris or that campaign. There are a number of Black staffers that have done interviews, and people are talking about it, and they're complaining about the treatment that they experience and the neglect towards Black voters during that campaign. We're going to get into all of that. We're also going to discuss, of course, Scott Ritter will be joining. We got a lot to chat about there with Scott about, of course, what's happening in Syria. We need to get into Al-Qaeda, about why the U.S. all of a sudden seems to be okay with Al-Qaeda. We'll get into all of that. We're also discussing the Luigi update. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been an update about that particular case, and we're going to dive into the way that Luigi is being viewed, not just by the public, but how he is being viewed by the host of The View, ladies and gentlemen, the host of The View. They are totally out of touch with the healthcare issue. They pretend to be in touch, but they're not. And we're just going to reveal some things tonight about that. And last but not least, and I'm not sure if this story is getting enough attention. I feel like it should get more. And that is this coup that just happened in Romania. This is around the Romania election, where apparently they have decided to come in and overturn it. And wait till you hear the reason why. I'm going to explain to you also why that coup in Romania could apply to us in the United States if we're not paying attention to what's happening around the world with these elections as well. So we're going to get into all that tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do think Scott Ritter is here. Scott, whenever you're ready, I'll go ahead and bring you in. Just give me a thumbs up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my special guest tonight is Scott Ritter. You've seen him here before. He is a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer. He was also a former United Nations Special Commission weapons inspector. He's an author, and he is a commentator. Welcome back, Scott. Long time no see.
Thanks for having me. I apologize for being late. You know, there's a saying about boomers. You know, I'm a boomer, and I couldn't get the link. Bottom line is I was spending a lot of time running around trying to get this link to work, but finally I appealed to I think she calls herself a cusper. And, you know, so here I am. So I apologize. It's just my lack of technical proficiency with computers is showing.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Scott, you're former military. So like you're not in the military anymore. So you don't have to be on time. That's what my dad says.
Oh, no. When you make a commitment, you need to be on time. And I made a commitment to you to be here at 8:00 and I apologize.
Okay. So Scott, crazy things that are happening right now in Syria. The big one for me is that now all of a sudden, and I'm sure like I'm old enough to remember when the U.S. government told us that Al-Qaeda was extremely dangerous and a problem. And obviously you're old enough to remember this too. But now all of a sudden the U.S. government seems to have no problem working with Al-Qaeda when it comes to Syria. And I want to get your take about that. How is it that now all of a sudden the U.S. government seems to be fine with Al-Qaeda, and they want us to just forget about all the things that they said about them and some of the video footage that we've seen about Al-Qaeda and how they treated prisoners and prisoners of war? What do you think is happening here?
Well, first of all, this isn't something that just happened overnight. We know, for instance, that Jake Sullivan, the current national security advisor back during the Obama administration, he articulated that that Al-Qaeda is useful to the United States because they can be used to bring down the regime of Bashar al-Assad. So there was apparently good Al-Qaeda, and then there was the bad Al-Qaeda. And the good Al-Qaeda are people that are doing things that are to the benefit of the United States. For instance, we also have, there's other good Al-Qaeda in Yemen. As long as they're fighting the Houthi, they're good Al-Qaeda. But when they turn their guns against us or our allies, then they're bad Al-Qaeda. And sometimes it's the same. This character, Jolani, who's the head of HTS, which is a rebranding of al-Nusra, which is a rebranding of Al-Qaeda. He's a Saudi who started off his Al-Qaeda existence going to Iraq to kill American soldiers. Now, again, we can talk about, you know, America shouldn't have invaded Iraq. I agree. We shouldn't have occupied Iraq 100%. 100%. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the United States saying that Al-Qaeda is bad. That's the policy of the United States. We can debate a whole bunch of things if you want to. 9/11, blowback. This was, something that was bound to happen because of our policies in the Middle East. But that's not the question. The question is, what is the policy of the United States? And the United States policy has been, even prior to 9/11, that Al-Qaeda is the bad guys, that they're terrorists. And then after 9/11, they're terrorists who represent a existential threat to the United States. They attacked us. So we're going to go over there to fight them so that never happens again over here. That's all. Remember, they're bad. We're going to go. We not only did we manufacture an excuse to invade Iraq, saying that Saddam was in league with Al-Qaeda. He wasn't, never was. Actually, Saddam was a perfect ally for us to fight Al-Qaeda. Secular man, didn't believe in religious extremism, but no, we had to overthrow Saddam. But in Afghanistan, we took down the Taliban because we said they facilitated the whole Al-Qaeda thing. Although the Taliban told us, hey, if they're our guests, and under the Pashtun policy of being guests, they're not allowed to do criminal acts like attack other people while they're our guests. If you can give us, and Mutawaka, who was their foreign minister at the time, told the United States, just provide the evidence that Al-Qaeda did this to you. Show us that they did this to you, and we'll take care of it, because they're our guests, and our guests aren't allowed to do this. But we didn't want to do it. We wanted to go in, occupy a country, kill people, do that whole thing. The point is, Al-Qaeda, our hatred of Al-Qaeda got us involved in 2 wars. Neither one we won. The Taliban's back today. Al-Qaeda was never fundamentally defeated in Afghanistan. And 2, in Iraq, Al-Qaeda in Iraq arose and was killing Americans, a lot of Americans. Jolani was one of the guys doing that. He was so good at it that he was sent to Syria to create, together with a guy named al-Baghdadi, to create something called ISIS. And they created ISIS, and then they start launching these attacks through Syria into Iraq, taking Mosul and moving down to Tikrit. And then we said, this is a threat. So we then, Major League intervened, and to push them out of Iraq, go into Syria, launch a major campaign. But then all of a sudden something happened. ISIS became a problem for Bashar al-Assad. And so we suddenly stopped saying, oh, we gotta kill ISIS. And we started saying, as long as they rebrand themselves, as long as they rename themselves. So ISIS, Al-Qaeda became al-Nusra, became other things. These Wahhabist, Salafist, anti-Assad elements. And we supported them. We funded them. We armed them. We trained them. We served as their diplomatic corps. On occasion, we served as their air force because their job was to take down Bashar. These are the same people that were killing American soldiers in Iraq. I just want you to understand it. The guy that's sitting there in Damascus today killed American soldiers. Now, you can say, well, America shouldn't have been there. I agree. Killed Americans, guys. You know what we do to people who kill Americans? We never forgive. I'm not saying this is right. I'm just telling you what we do. I'm not justifying this policy. I'm telling you what we do. Qasem Soleimani, you remember the reason why we killed Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, is because he helped lead a revolt in the south with the Shia that killed hundreds of Americans. And we said that's unforgivable. So we will do everything we can to track him down and kill him. And we did. Jolani killed hundreds of Americans. And yet here he is sitting in Damascus, and we love him because he got rid of Bashar al-Assad. This is insanity. It proves that we have no moral compass as a nation. We have zero moral compass. We stand for nothing. I made a statement early on in this. I said, we can never again celebrate 9/11 after this because this is a disgrace for everything. No, not celebrate, mark. No, we need to mark 9/11. We need to mark the thousands of Americans and others who died that day and remember them and never forget. But we can never, ever, ever again allow the government to use an event like that to push us into conflict because the government stands for nothing. They got us involved in wars that were ostensibly about defeating Al-Qaeda. They got us involved in wars that were ostensibly about defeating Al-Qaeda, but they weren't. had nothing to do with defeating Al Qaeda and everything to do with using that tragedy to project American power. If you remember, General Clark, Wesley Clark, retired general at the time, said that right after 9/11, he was in a meeting in the Pentagon where they talked about 7 nations that were going to fall. Yep. You know what number 2 nation was? Syria. Syria was supposed to be the second nation that fell, and it almost fell as we moved in. But then Iraq got a little too complicated. We couldn't go in, but we had troops moving into Al Qaim area ready to move. We had special forces already operating across the border. We were going to go in and take care of Bashar al-Assad because that was part of the grand strategy. This has all been about getting rid of Assad. We've spent the last quarter century trying to get rid of Bashar al-Assad, and we finally succeeded using Al Qaeda, which tells you this was never about defending America, this was always about using tragedy to create even greater tragedy. Because while the 3,000 dead Americans is a tragedy, what about the 4,000+ dead Americans who died fighting wars that didn't need to be fought, apparently, wars that had no meaning? Do you understand that we just disgraced all the sacrifice these soldiers made? Every soldier we sent to Afghanistan to fight Al Qaeda, to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here. Every soldier we sent into Iraq to take down Saddam Hussein because somehow he was in cahoots with Al Qaeda. We invaded Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein, claiming that he was in cahoots with Al Qaeda. Well, hell's bells, Sabby, we're in cahoots with Al Qaeda. Why don't we invade America and take down our government? God forbid we talk about that. But this is insane what's happening here. We stand for nothing. We, the American people, stand for nothing because we're not screaming down our top of our lungs. I remember when Osama bin Laden, when we killed a 57-year-old diabetic in Abbottabad in Afghanistan or in Pakistan, and the American people surround the White House, USA flags and all this stuff. Where are you now? Oh, you USA thumpers. Where are you now? Now that you realize you've been lied to, now that you realize it was a charade, a sham, why aren't you surrounding the White House now? Instead of saying USA, you have to say Joe must go. Joe must go, because he literally has empowered Al Qaeda. The people that crashed airplanes into our building, the people that murdered Americans in different lands. The guy who murdered Americans is now in power in Syria because of us.
It also shows you how little they care about American soldiers, which I've tried to tell people as well. They don't really care about the Americans. So they'll care more about Israel before they care about America.
Ask the National Guardsmen from Georgia, Florida, any state that went over to Iraq or Afghanistan on multiple deployments at a time when our services were overextended. So we kept them there. We'd extend their service. I think it was a Florida National Guard unit, just kept getting extended. They came home, they lost their jobs. If they were wounded, the VA didn't know what to do with them. Many wounded National Guardsmen ended up getting hooked on heroin in a room committing suicide because they were abandoned by their country. And yet now we have laws being passed that say we must give Israeli soldiers all the benefits of Americans. Israeli soldiers committing genocide in Gaza. We must give them the benefits of American troops, and we must give it to them even better. Hell, they had a ceremony here in New York State where the governor put the flag at half-mast because some guy who calls himself an American but went over to fight for Israel got kidnapped and killed as a soldier, active duty soldier, and we're now treating him as a hero? Oh my goodness, Kathy Hochul. There are so many New York veterans that went over to fight these wars who got wounded, or if they weren't physically wounded, got emotionally wounded, and they're wandering the streets now, can't have a job, drug addict. What are you doing about them? But you're going to celebrate an American who betrayed his country by putting on the uniform of another nation, joining a genocidal military, a military that has actually been indicted for genocide by the International Court of Justice, and we're going to put the flag at half. The American flag. At least be honest about it, Governor Hochul. Don't make it an American flag or the New York State flag. Just run up the Israeli flag and be honest that you're just an Israeli, that we're in a colony of Israel or something, because that's what you just did. You put the interests of Israel above the interests of Americans. We had Americans slaughtered overseas in these wars that we sent them to. We had Americans get wounded by the thousands. Americans get broken by the millions. And we're not doing a damn thing for these people, but oh my God, we're going to give benefits to Israeli genocidal maniacs and lower our flag at half-staff in their memory and hold big ceremony. This nation is so fundamentally broken. I mean, we don't know what motivates people to join. I joined out of patriotism. I was one of these blind patriots. My father was a career Air Force guy. I lived overseas, and all I wanted to do was wear the uniform and defend my country. And I believed, honest to God, that I was defending democracy and all this kind of stuff. Today, I don't know how many people join with that kind of belief, but people join for different reasons. They join for economic reasons. They join to have a better life, to get opportunities, to get training, education, whatever. They put on the uniform. And they raise their hands and they take an oath. And that oath requires them to serve in some pretty bad places. They didn't get to pick those places. The government picked it because we, the people, allowed the government to pick it. We didn't do a damn thing to stop them. And then they went overseas. And then things happened to them and they come home. We got these little yellow stickers. You've seen them on the back of the car, haven't you? Support our troops.
Yeah.
It's the biggest pack of what I've ever seen in my life. Stop putting that sticker on there because you don't support the troops at all. If you supported the troops, when was the last time you went to the VA to change the colostomy bag of a 30-year-old who basically lost the ability to function when he was 22 because of an IED? And he can't move his legs, and his brain's a little shattered. And the girl that he thought he was going to marry just couldn't be around this, so she left him. And his family, he's inconvenient to his family. Hell, it's holidays. We don't want to go deal with Cousin Marky because Cousin Marky stinks because he poops into a bag and he pees in a bag. And sometimes that bag breaks and it's sort of disgusting and gross. And he can't talk. He sits there and he drools and he mumbles. So we're just going to forget about old Cousin Marky. We're going to come here and have our holiday where all the healthy people are there. Dealing with their own issues their own way, overdosing on Xanax and drinking whiskey or whatever that we do to cope. But we're going to abandon him. There are so many abandoned Americans right now in VAs. And there's Americans that haven't gotten access to the VA. What are you doing about that, people with the yellow sticker? Not a damn thing. So please don't tell me you support the American troops. You don't. You support an ideal. You support a notion. It makes you feel good putting that on your card. It's about you. It's about being selfish. But you don't support the troops because, if you supported the troops, you go visit them. And the moment you visit them, you'd say, never again am I going to let this happen to young Americans. And then you'd start going out and being an activist to prevent wars and make sure that we didn't get involved in wars of aggression, wars of choice. So there's a difference between somebody getting killed or wounded defending the country if people actually attack us. But nobody's attacking us. We're attacking them. We are going all the way around the world to commit acts of violence. And then the guys and gals that we send over there to commit these acts of violence that we praise. I mean, how many of you honestly have been, you non-serving son of a bitches have met somebody in a bar that came back? Hey, what was it like? I want to live through you through, I want to experience your existence. What was it like? Did you kill anybody? Did you have see anything go blow up and all that kind? You stupid little turd, get out of their face. They don't want to hear anything from you because you're not them. You didn't experience what they experienced. You stayed home, and they're not going to sit there and tell you what they did. They're not going to brag about it because they're probably ashamed about it. They're probably ashamed of most of what they did overseas because they realized when they got there that they don't understand at all what they're trying to do. That the mission makes no sense. And it just ultimately comes down to survival. So we took healthy young American kids, put them overseas, and basically said the game is called survive. Well, I thought the game was defending democracy. No. The game is just called survival. We're going to put you in the world's worst possible situation, make you drive around and have bombs blow up your cars, or we're going to put you in the middle of a valley so the enemy can surround you in the hills above and pour rockets on you, and your job is just to survive. But why am I here? To survive. Your whole goal is to survive a tour. Yay. Guys, this is stupid. This is what we did. This is all the global war on terror was about, because apparently it wasn't about fighting terrorists, because the lead terrorist is now in command in Syria because of us.
Yeah, it's crazy because I always tell people that I saw a lot of people come back from Iraq in terrible shape, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. And I think that people really don't know. And it's always funny to me when they say that, you're supposed to or want to defend your country. But I always continue to ask, like, who are we defending ourselves from? Like, who is, because like, who is trying to attack? We're the aggressor. The United States government, the United States military is the aggressor. We're the ones that are going overseas to attack other countries. These countries aren't coming after us. Like it's crazy. It's absurd. And then I want to show you what Dan Shaw said. So there's this clip here from Dan Shaw that's circulating around on Twitter. And he's talking about propaganda. I want to play a little bit about this, about Syria. He's trying to alert people and make Americans aware not to fall for the same trap that we fell for with Libya and with Saudi Arabia. Just a second of this.
To the American people, what's happening in Syria, the destabilization of Syria, this is not good for us. This is not good for any human beings. This is Libya 2.0, the same thing they did to Libya in 2011. And right now, the purpose of the New York Times and a bunch of fake American leftists out there is to whitewash. These are Al-Qaeda offshoots, Al-Nusra. They're trying to repackage all of this. They're trying to whitewash what they're calling HTS, the people who've marched on Damascus. You have the Israelis coming from the south. You have the Turkish forces coming from the north. All of these different entities, they have their own proxy forces. Of course, the United States has had how many thousands and thousands of troops over there. Syria is oil rich up in the north. How do we cut through all of the propaganda? Because what they're doing is they're having this hyper focus on quote unquote Assad's prisons and in dungeons. And that's not to take away from anybody's suffering, but all of this sensationalism, it deserves context. Don't forget, they did the same thing to Libya with their sensationalism there. Their big story back in 2011, if you remember, was that Gaddafi had given the Libyan troops Viagra and unleashed them on innocent women. And so they always come up with these lies to try to mask over what their designs are. What does this all mean for Palestine? Syria historically has been the backbone of this axis of resistance. How telling that these terrorist forces, and notice how the New York Times, in the mouthpieces of U.S. imperialism, suddenly they're saying rebel forces. Suddenly Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra repackaged are no longer terrorists. Notice how they're not in conflict with the Zionists. They're not even talking about the G side. This is a huge defeat for the Palestinian people. This is a dark day for the entire world. There's a ton of confusion and obfuscation. First and foremost, this is a media war. This is an
Let's pause there. So Scott, I want to bring you in here. One of the things that he mentioned, let's not make the same mistake that we did with Libya. Let's not fall for this again. But the other part that he brought up there, of course, is the media and the confusion. I just saw this video from CNN where they said, we have prisoners here who are escaped. And I think you saw that video as well circulating around on Twitter. But I feel like it's happening again. And this is not to say, I'm not as knowledgeable about Syria. I know a lot more about Gaza and about the West Bank because I've learned about that over the years. When it comes to Syria, I don't know as much. But what I have noticed is that Israel has moved in. Netanyahu is happy. He made a video where he's saying this is a celebratory day for Israel. So I know that's not good for Syrians. But also, I never agree with the U.S. government overthrowing a leader because we know what happened to people in Libya after that happened. We know what happened to people, in Afghanistan. We know what happened to, even Saddam Hussein, like after they overthrew him. We know what happens to the people in those countries after the U.S. overthrows their leaders. So I don't see that this would be good for the Syrian people. But he brings up confusion, and there is a lot of division over this one, Scott. Gaza is easier, I think, for a lot of people to grasp and understand. When it comes to Syria, I noticed like there is a divide. Like some people are happy that Assad is gone. Hamas put out a statement saying they're happy and congratulations to the people in Gaza. And then there's another side that's like, this is all propaganda. You guys are falling for this. And I'm wondering, like, where do you stand on that particular issue? Do you feel that like what Danny's saying here is pretty spot on about the propaganda and what's really happening there in Syria, or why not?
Well, what I would say is that the situation in Syria is complicated by history. And what I mean by that is, first of all, gosh, I'm going to get in trouble. I mean, I've gotten in trouble all week long because I've said the honest to God's truth. I mean, I condemn Hamas. I'm sitting here trying to help them, trying to sit here and create political conditions that are conducive to the creation of a Palestinian state. And they don't understand that they're cheering that which is going to be it's over for Hamas. They've lost. And they're cheering it. They're cheering the end of Syria. The fact that Bashar al-Assad fell breaks the critical land link connecting Iran with Hezbollah, which makes the axis of resistance viable. The axis of resistance, their participation in this ongoing escalatory war of attrition, is the only thing that has allowed Hamas to survive this long. Hamas, why don't you take a look at the damn weapons you have in your hands? You know who gave you those weapons. You know damn well where they came from. You know who paid for them. And now you're cheering the end of this. Screw you. Why should I be more Gazan than you? Why should I believe in a Palestinian state more than you? Because you clearly don't believe in a Palestinian state if you're cheering the end of that which made it possible for you to even think about having a Palestinian state right now. You know, we go back. I put a clip out there. I know it's a movie, but it's of Lawrence of Arabia, and you get to the end, and you have the Damascus Congress. Basically, the Arab uprising took Damascus ahead of the British military because they wanted to make sure that the Arabs had a say for how the post-Ottoman Empire Arab lands would be divvied up. And they're there, and there's no such thing as Arabs. There's tribes of Arabs, but there's no Arab people, Arab land, Arab this, Arab that. No, there isn't. There's Hawatat and Harith. Those were the two tribes that were depicted in this thing. But tribes are against tribes. Tribes have always been against tribes. Go to Libya. It's two historical Arab invasions, migrations that have created a certain tribal element in the Benghazi area, and another tribal element in the Tripoli area that historically don't get along with one another. And therefore, now that Gaddafi's gone, the tribes started fighting the tribes. Arabs don't get along with Arabs. That's just a statement of fact. Look at the Palestinians. We have Hamas and we have Fatah, and they fought a civil war. Palestinians fighting Palestinians. They still don't get along. And that's why there's not going to be a Palestinian state. There was a potential because a man named Sinwar decided that he was going to take a bold action on October 7th. That bold action was to create conditions that would get Israel bogged down in a conflict that would expose the truth of Israel to the world, leading to the world rejecting Israel, and then because of the axis of resistance, increase the conflicts on the periphery of Israel in a way that led to an escalation, a war of attrition, without distracting. This is such an important part. People listen to me. Without distracting attention away from Gaza. You see, the Palestinian people's cause only works if that's all we're talking about. Because then when we talk about that, we look at the dead children, we look at the dead civilians, and we call it out for what it is, genocide. And then we hold the Israelis accountable for that. And as long as we're having that discussion, the world starts to turn. For the first time, you have a whole bunch of people around the world saying there's an absolute requirement for a Palestinian state. But remember, for that to happen, Israel has to be defeated. And you can't have an escalation of the conflict that detracts attention away from this. You get it? Are you listening to me, you Palestinian people out there that are cheering the demise of Bashar al-Assad? Did you hear a word I said? And apparently you didn't, because now you're cheering the collapse of the Assad regime. That's the end of the Axis resistance ability to support you. So unsupported, Israel suddenly is now victorious. Instead of a defeated Israel, the day Israel signed that, put in that ceasefire with Hezbollah, they were defeated. That ceasefire wasn't a sign of Israeli strength. It was a sign of Israeli weakness. The Israeli military said, we are too exhausted to continue this. Stop this insanity. And Netanyahu did. And now he was being confronted. Read Seymour Hersh's brilliant Substack piece about the domestic political crisis that Netanyahu was in. He was literally not going to survive this year. He was going to be booted. His tiny little pathetic right-wing fanatic coalition was going to collapse. Palestine was this goddamn close to winning. This close. And then Assad fell. And now we have a conflict that's bigger than Gaza. When was the last time anybody in the mainstream media talked about Gaza? When did they talk about the suffering they got? Because the Israelis are still blowing the living hell out of them, still killing the children, but nobody's talking about it. This is what I warned you about. There's something bigger than this now. And it's all been forgotten because we never cared about you. We, the collective we. You started to get some people to care about you, but no one cares about Gaza right now, except you, Sabby, and others. But your voices, where's it on the mainstream media? Where's all the people that are saying we're going to line up and support this? Nope. Not even Hamas can support its own cause because they're so happy that Bashar al-Assad fell. Well, you made your bed, now lay in it. You know, I can't be more Palestinian than the Palestinians. I can't be. And I'm going to call it out as I see it. And I condemn every single one of you who are dancing on the grave of Bashar al-Assad because you're dancing on the grave of Palestine. And if you want to have a discussion about this, I will. And I'll call you out for what you are. Hypocrites who have never had your act together. Fatah and Hamas. Explain that to me. Explain why the president of the Palestinian Authority is an Israeli asset. Why did you elect a man who is an Israeli asset? Why did you allow him to continue to rule and he sells you out every single day? And you want us to be more Palestinian than you. You want us to demonstrate in the street on behalf of Palestine. We didn't for you. We did it for Sinwar. We did it because Sinwar started something that actually for the first time paved a way for the creation of a Palestinian state. And it was this close. And now Bashar al-Assad's gone and you're cheering his demise. Why are you blaming him? Syria is an artificial country. Syria is not the product of some Arab destiny. It was drawn on a map by Frenchmen at the end of World War I who were given a mandate by the League of Nations to manipulate the Arab world together with the British. How do you think Iraq existed? Lines on a map. How do you think Jordan existed? Lines on a map. Lines drawn by British and French people. Syria, the Vilayet of Aleppo, if you study and again, this is, Sabby, I'm just going to irritate every one of your pro-Syrian or whatever, but I know my history, and they tend to forget their history or overlook it. But when the Ottoman Empire collapsed and the Turks were called upon to define what was Turkey proper, what was Anatolia proper, the Vilayet of Aleppo was considered to be Turkey. They considered it to be Turkey, and they've been ruling it for thousands of years. You know what else was Turkey? The Vilayet of Mosul. That was part of Turkey too. But the French and the British drew different lines on a map. And so they created this artificial entity called Syria. They created another artificial entity called Iraq. And then they did things. You had Kurdish uprisings, attempts to create Kurdish homelands, division of the Kurds, etc. Syria is a fake state. It's a majority Shia state or Sunni state with significant minorities, Christian minorities, Alawite minorities, etc. That is fake. Faisal, I think it was King Faisal, he got overthrown by the Baathists, and the Baathists were primarily Alawites, this who decided that they weren't going to have a fake Arab monarchy, because that's what King Faisal was a fake Arab monarch. They said, we're going to create a Syrian national identity. That's what the Baathists, that's what happened in Iraq when they tossed out, the Hashemite king. They didn't toss him out, they killed him. He and his family. And then the Baathists came in. And the Baathists said, we're going to turn this fake country and we're going to create a sense of national identity. And that's what the dream of the Baathist Party was, to create a sense of national identity out of an artificial nation. And they tried to get all these different groups to work together. I'm not saying it was perfect. There was a lot of resistance, a lot of pushback. Some of the pushback came from the Muslim Brotherhood. In 1982, I believe, the Muslim Brotherhood rose up in the city of Homs, attacked a military academy, and the Syrian government responded by launching a brutal counterattack that ended up evicting the Muslim Brotherhood from Syria. A lot of the people that are cheering the demise of Bashar al-Assad today are people whose families are linked to that uprising. So they say the Assad regime was brutal against us. I always remind them that it started with you killing Syrian soldiers in a military academy, that nothing happens in a vacuum. The brutality doesn't happen out of nowhere. This is about people resisting the concept of a Syrian Arab Republic. That was the vision of the Baathists. If you look at the stars on the flag, that I believe is the stars of Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. The original supposed to be Syrian Arab Republic. It never manifested itself for a number of reasons. But Syria believed in that. The Assad, Hafez Assad, the father, believed in it. But then something happens. When you start to rule without a democratic institution, without democratic institutions, and this was the case with the Baathists, you start to assume dictatorial powers, and he did. Hafez Assad was a dictator, and he ruled brutally. And now, when you have this kind of dictatorship, you get these entrenched elites who turn their power into privilege, and they start ruling the country as sort of their extended economic fiefdoms. And so you have a number of generals and you have a number of governors and things who, instead of doing what's best for the people, are doing what's best for them. And Syria became this corrupt edifice. Bashar al-Assad was an accidental president. Wasn't supposed to be president. His older brother was supposed to be president. He died in a car accident. So Bashar al-Assad got pulled out of his ophthalmology practice and said, no, you've got to now get groomed. 1994, I believe, they began the grooming. He went to military academy, etc. Became the governor of Lebanon, the Syrian occupation of Lebanon. His father dies in 2000. He becomes president. And he begins a process of a sincere effort to democratize Syria, making an effort. But understand, he's swimming upstream against decades of entrenched corruption. He's trying his best. In 2005, he makes an effort, but in 2006, there's a drought. I mean, it's like if the heavens said, Bashar, we're not going to give you a chance to succeed. There's a drought, and the drought devastates the Syrian countryside. And this young president who didn't want to be president now is dealing with a crisis. People abandon the villages, come pouring into the cities, and the Syrian government's not prepared to deal with it. And so people blamed him. They blamed him. They said he was the man responsible. And then he has to turn to this power elite now. You have a drought, you have a crisis, you can't reform it. You have to turn to them and say, help me govern. And so they crack down on dissent, and they use the brutal tactics of the father that are continued under the son. And now what happens to rebuild Syria? The Saudis come in and they pour in money to get the villages back up. Every time the Saudis bring in money to repair a village or fix a village, they build a mosque. They bring imams who are Wahhabists or Salafists in there. They begin to radicalize these populations who was already mad at Bashar al-Assad for not being ready for the droughts. And so now you have a situation where there's conflict in the countryside. And again, for all the people that said Bashar al-Assad brutalized my family, were your families part of those radicalized elements, radicalized by the Saudis who began to move against the government? Because again, nothing happens in a vacuum. I don't think Bashar al-Assad woke up in the morning and said, I'm going to screw with your family. I think your family said, I'm sick and tired of this government. I'm going to screw with it. And you paid the price. See, there's no such thing as innocent.
Well, what about, because I have heard from Syrian Americans, there were Syrian Americans here in Boston that were very happy that Assad was gone. What about this? What about Syrian Americans that have like testified about the dungeons and all of that, like in Syria? What about that? Because I think what's happening is that some people are saying, like you said, Assad was a dictator. Some people are saying he wasn't. You're saying that, and this isn't even like a left-right thing. It's just something I'm noticing. Like some people are saying Assad was a dictator. Some people are saying that he wasn't. Some people are also saying that like he, brutalized the people. And to this point, thank you so much for this, New York Varsity. Aaron Mate has reported on this multiple times about the OPCW whistleblower report. But New York Varsity is asking about the gas attack. So this is another one that comes into play, right? So like Vanessa Beeley has debunked like the chemical attacks that he gassed his own people. So has Aaron Mate has debunked that as well. But I still see corporate media bring this up. And even more so recently, they said he gassed his own people. It does remind me when corporate media said that Gaddafi was killing his own people, etc.
Was Bashar al-Assad a dictator? Yes, he was. Okay, he inherited the dictatorship. As I said, he was seeking to reform. You can't jump from dictatorship, entrenched dictatorship, to, Jeffersonian democracy overnight. You have to build institutions. And as he sought to build these institutions, as I mentioned, from 2000 to 2005, he sought to do this. He met resistance amongst the entrenched elites. And before he could have a chance to actually make a move on them, the drought hit. And because of the drought hitting, you can't do radical reformation while your country is collapsing. So he was dealing that drought. As soon as the effects of the drought end, you have the Arab Spring. And now you have these various groups rising up who are funded from abroad. There was dissent in Syria. But again, I just want to ask the people, all these Syrian Americans, why are you here? Why are you in America? Well, I know why my wife is here. She's Georgian. She's here because her country fell, because her country was taken over by Abkhazian rebels. They were ethnically cleansed. Were you ethnically cleansed? Why are you here? I mean, it's a fair question because, are you here because in 2011 you took CIA money to create a social network inside Syria so that you could go out and watch the Wahhabists attack a police station, then film the police firing back, take that imagery, load it up on a satellite phone that you were given by a CIA-funded NGO for the purpose of getting that out there to shape the narrative around the world, because that was digital democracy pushed by the State Department and the CIA. Did you take State Department money? Did you take CIA money to interfere with the government of Bashar al-Assad? I'm not saying that you're wrong to do that, but if you're here because he cracked down on you, you ain't innocent. You made a decision, you took an action, and you're paying the price. My point is almost everybody who's out there cheering against Bashar al-Assad at some point in time did something that caused a cause and effect relationship. It didn't just happen in a vacuum. And when you're Bashar al-Assad as the president of Syria, and you're looking at the CIA funding people to overthrow your government, you're not going to stand by and let that happen. No sovereign state should allow the CIA to dictate outcomes to them. The CIA, after doing what they did to Libya, transferred billions of dollars of weaponry out of Libya through Turkey to bring it in to arm these groups. The CIA, Timber Sycamore was the CIA operation. The Department of Defense sent military forces to train up Free Syrian Army people to come in and use American weapons. And then, of course, we went to what we talked about, ISIS coming in, Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda, asserting itself, and we allowing this to happen because it was leading to the demise of Bashar al-Assad's regime. Was Bashar al-Assad, did his government have dungeons? Sabby, let me tell you this. Hell yeah, they did. You want to hear more about these dungeons? Ask the CIA. Because after 9/11, you know who the number one provider of intelligence to the United States about Al-Qaeda terrorism was in the world? The Syrian government. They bent over backwards to cooperate. And one of the ways they cooperated is they opened up their dungeons and their torture centers. And every time we captured an Al-Qaeda operative around the world, we brought them to Syria. And the Syrians took them and tortured them. And then the intelligence the Syrians gave us, we used to go out and get other people. So, yeah, I'm not sitting here saying that's good. I'm just sitting here saying it's a hell of a lot more complicated than it is for us saying we're good, he's bad. It's a very, very complicated world out there. And the notion that Bashar al-Assad is a force of evil is absurd. Bashar al-Assad is the president of a country who was never really given a chance to do what he wanted to do, is to create democratic institutions. And one of the reasons he couldn't is from 2011 until a couple of days ago when he ran away, the United States has been working overtime together with other nations to overthrow him, to remove him from power. And as the leader of a sovereign state, he wasn't going to let that happen. So, I have frankly speaking, zero sympathy for people who are cheering for the demise of Bashar al-Assad. Zero sympathy for you, because you don't know what you're cheering. If you claim to be Syrian and you love your country, you just condemned your country to be controlled by head choppers. Right now, ask the Syrian community of Syria how it feels to have HTS out there. Ask the Armenian community how it feels. Ask the Alawites how it feels. Ask anybody who was associated with the Bashar al-Assad government how it feels. They're being hunted down and murdered, slaughtered in the streets. You know, Syrian American women wearing your nice little Western dresses here, all that kind of stuff. Try going back right now and wearing that dress in Damascus and watch what happens. Watch what happens. Try walking down the street with a boyfriend who's not your husband and see what happens. It ain't good what's happening to Syria, guys, right now. It's a disaster, and yet you're cheering it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I was going to bring this in here because I saw videos as well. Even Mehdi Hassan, who was one of the people that said, oh, all these people that were cheering, rooting for Gaza are now not happy about Assad being overthrown or whatever. So what he said here was, he came back later and said, in saying that Israel was carrying out 100s of airstrikes on Syria and no Western leader will say a word. The West has not an inch of moral high ground from which to lecture Russia on bombing Ukraine or illegally annexing Ukrainian territory. So he said this was after he yelled at all of us. And my response was, Mehdi applauded this project and will never admit he was wrong, because if he did, he would have to admit that some of us were right. So this is another thing that I said too, because I saw the videos of what's happening to, apparently there's a Christian minority also that's in Syria. I saw some of the videos, what's happening to them recently. I mean, Israel has just gone in and they're like, and remember, Syria, that was part of the greater Israel project. Netanyahu held up the map himself in front of the UN and said, this is the blessing and what we have right now is a curse. And he wanted that. So what's next? Because we talked about the video from General Wesley Clark. What was the last country he mentioned was Iraq, or not Iraq, Iran. So that's next.
Yep, you're 100% correct. Look, don't get me going with Mehdi Hassan. I have no use for the man, but I will say this, that it's not just that Israel's bombing thousands of targets. Israel unilaterally made a decision that it is going to eliminate the military infrastructure of Syria. They've done this without any Security Council resolution authority. Syria was not attacking Israel, so there's no Article 51, self-defense thing. This is just an absolute violation of international law. So for all you purists out there who can't, understand when Russia articulates an Article 51 case for moving in on Ukraine based upon the notion of collective self-defense and preemptive self-defense. You didn't take the time to study international law or dig up the Caroline Affair or anything like that. You just said no, Russia's evil, Russia's wrong, Russia's blah, 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 blah. Well, what about Israel right now? Because there is no legal justification for what Israel's doing right now. They have just decided on their own that they are going to eliminate the totality of Syria's military capacity. So all those airfields with all those airplanes, they're being blown up. Every single hardened aircraft shelter has a hole through it as the Israelis are going in and blowing up aircraft. They're blowing up everything that's above ground. Watch, soon they're going to find that, because now they found the underground tunnels outside of Baghdad that have the Syrian Scud missiles. The Israelis aren't going to let Scud missiles fall in the hands of of these terrorists. Hell, we just gave Al-Qaeda Scud missiles, ladies and gentlemen. America's damn good. USA. We gave Al-Qaeda Scud missiles. Wow, we're pretty stupid. But Israel's blowing everything up, and they have no legal right to do this, but they're doing it in not one peep. Not only that, Israel has pushed forward now, in addition to already having annexed the Golan Heights. I don't want to hear anybody ever talk about Crimea again. When Israel annexed the Golan Heights and we didn't say a damn thing, don't you ever let Crimea come through your lips. But now Israel's pushing even further, taking the rest of Syria and Golan and moving up towards Damascus. They're out now about 20 kilometers away from Damascus, where their artillery can control things. No, but what about the Turks? The Turks have raised the Turkish flag over Aleppo. And mark my words, Turkey's going to move to annex both Idlib and Aleppo. I don't want to hear another word from anybody ever again about Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk. Don't want to hear it, guys. Shut up. You don't have a right to talk. If you're not screaming from the top of your voice about what Turkey's getting ready to do there, and not just that, but what the United States has done in southeastern Syria, northeastern Syria, with the oil fields. We've illegally occupied oil fields now for over a decade, stealing the oil wealth of a nation in violation of international law, and no one's ever said anything about that. I mean, you and I say it, but I mean, none of these, heartfelt people about Russia and what they're doing to Ukraine. My God, those Russians are so horrible. Russia can justify everything it's done legally. They've gone through at least the motion of looking like it's legal. It's not illegal. We're not even trying. Donald Trump bragged about the last time he was president. We're taking the oil. It's a violation of international law. Everything we're doing everything that's happening in Syria right now is a violation of international law, and we're just acting as if it's A-OK. There ain't nothing good about what's happening in Syria right now. Nothing. And it will come back to haunt it's not just a Christian minority, Sabby. This is the oldest group of Christians in the world. This is Jesus's people. This is people from the Bible. This is where Paul came to preach. This is the oldest Christian community. This is the heart of Christianity. And it's being wiped out as we speak. Being wiped out as we speak. If you're a Christian, for all these evangelical, wonderful Christians in America, you do understand that which defines who you are, the Bible, the Christianity of the Bible, is being eradicated right now by Al-Qaeda, that we have enabled to do this. And yet Hamas is going to cheer I am so mad at the Palestinian community right now. I mean, I'm going down on Saturday to Tampa, and I'm going to be speaking with them. And I told them
don't speak to them like that.
Oh, I will. No, you don't know anything about me if you don't think I'm not going to speak to them like that. I am in your face about this because I am so furious at this insane cheering about the fall of the man whose country enabled you to even think about having the possibility of a homeland. Oh, we can always think about it. Yes, you can, but you weren't going to get it. If you're a Palestinian and you think that on October 6, 2023, you had a snowball's chance in hell of having a Palestinian state, I want to know what you're smoking, because you were dead. You were in the ground. They were throwing dirt on your grave. The Abrams Accord was being finalized. Israel was about to solidify a relationship with Saudi Arabia that would begin the Middle East, the India, Middle East, European economic corridor that would inject money into it, money you don't have, make you totally irrelevant. And then Israel would erase the West Bank, and Israel would nullify Gaza. And you're gone. I don't care what you think. You're gone. And now you're gone again, because Sinwar gave you hope. October 7th created something that could have led to a Palestinian state. And now it's gone. Now, it's not your fault that it's gone, but you're cheering. This is like jumping off of the Titanic into the water, and you have a ship coming in to rescue you, but it's driven by a captain you hate, and it sinks. You're like, yeah, the ship sank. I hate that captain. But you're going to drown. How stupid are you? Yeah, so I am going to go down there and we're going to have this conversation. But, I'm just furious because, again, what now they're going to say, but you have to do something, Scott. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Continue to speak out for you who cheer that which is to bring in your demise? Hell no. You think I'm going to stand side by side with people that don't respect themselves enough to understand that what happened in Syria is the end of the Palestinian state? Israel has won. Do you not understand that? Israel has won, and Donald Trump's coming in. He's not going to reverse the Israeli victory. He's going to double down. Look at who he put in his cabinet. Zionist Central. So what do you think is going to happen in the next 4 years? When the world should be working on building a Palestinian state because a window of opportunity had opened. Instead, Donald Trump is going to be working the exact opposite. Gaza is going to be depopulated. The West Bank is going to be shut down. Israel will normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia that said, we will never normalize a relationship with Israel until there's a Palestinian state and the capital is in Jerusalem. Watch how quick they walk away from that, because Arabs never cared about Arabs. The Arab world hates the Palestinian people, despises them, doesn't want a Palestine. Sinwar created an opportunity where there could be a Palestine. And tragically, that opportunity is gone because of the collapse of Syria. And they're cheering this.
Well, I always say, like, even at the start of this, like, I am here to learn and I have like my advocacy, but I always said, like, I can't really, I don't feel like it's my place to tell them what to do, if that makes sense. But I think that it's very scary what's happening, because I just, to be fair, if Kamala would have won, her cabinet would have Zionists too.
Yep, 100%.
The same, but it's scary. And I mean, like, I feel like nobody is willing to step up and stand up to Israel. Even countries that are not, and I know Russia has its thing with Ukraine right now and everything, but even the countries that are not buddy with Israel aren't willing to step up and stand up to Israel. South Africa, I think, did the best that they could, which is by taking them to the IC, taking them to the Hague.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this has become an uncontrollable monster that no one is trying to defeat. Like, I feel like I thought
Sinwar was defeating them. Sinwar and the Axis of Resistance. Sabby, I'm telling you, before this disaster in Syria unfolded, that ceasefire with Hezbollah was, I mean, the Sinwar's vision, he was killed long before, was this close to being realized, because the only way a Palestinian state happens is for the defeat of Israel. It's the only way, because Israel has said, as it currently exists, that there will not be a Palestinian state. So as long as Israel's empowered to act on that belief, there won't be a Palestinian state. You have to get the international community mobilized to say there is a need for a Palestine. And that was happening. You mentioned the International Court of Justice. Yeah. South Africa did a great thing, and other nations have joined in. This is huge, but it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened in a vacuum. It happened because of October 7th. It happened because Sinwar started a process that compelled Israel to reveal its true identity to the world. The world now knows that Israel is a genocidal state ruled by maniacs. And the world was starting to reject that. You started to see nations back away and say, we recognize the state of Palestine. You started to see this. And Israel was being defeated. You had Israeli generals and politicians coming out and saying, the economy is trashed. $67 billion hit the first year of the conflict, coming up to $100 billion here. No investments coming in. The destruction of the Israeli economy was central to the defeat of Israel. You have Israel politically divided. Netanyahu was a hated man, despised for any number of reasons. Corruption, trying to change the courts, and now, his failure in October 7th. He said, I am the security guy. I will be the savior of Israel. But everything he did failed. Everything he did failed. And then Syria collapses. And now he's suddenly the savior of Israel. Suddenly he's up there saying, I'm the guy that helped create the conditions that led to the collapse of Syria, which is now leading to the defeat of Hezbollah and the defeat of Iran. Now, there's people out there saying, well, Iran can still do this, do that. You do know that to make Iran's power viable long term, Iran needed Hezbollah next door to Israel, like a loaded pistol to the head of Israel. Iran needed this. Okay, Hezbollah now has, through its escalation and managed escalation, suffered grievously. Hassan Nasrallah, the man who led Hezbollah since 1992, turned it not just into a great resistance movement, but a great political force in Lebanon. He's dead. His deputies, down to multiple layers, are also dead. Hezbollah itself has been hit hard, not defeated. That's why the Israelis were suing for a ceasefire, because Hezbollah hadn't been defeated. But the key here is that ceasefire would have created an opportunity for Hezbollah to regroup and for Iran to re-equip it so that pistol could be loaded again, pointed at the head of Israel. That's what makes the axis of resistance work. In order to arm Hezbollah, you need Syria. It is the land corridor through which everything happens. And that's gone now. It's gone. And therefore, Hezbollah is now isolated. It's not going to be able to re-equip. Whatever it has is what it has. Iran now, if they're talking about a conflict with Israel, isn't able to have Hezbollah open up a second front and divert Israeli resources there. Now Israel will be able to put the totality of its military capacity against Iran, a completely different picture. And the United States now will be inclined to support Israel if there is a greater conflict against Iran. So this changes the dynamic for the Iranians, which is why one of the reasons why you have the Iranian president saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have a general war with Israel. We have to regroup. There's a political divide in Iran right now between the president and the hardliners in the IRGC on how to go forward with this. And the fact that there's a debate means that the supreme leader himself is not sure about the direction he wants to go, that he's not convinced that, a direct confrontation with Israel at this point in time is in the interests of Iran. They joined BRICS. They're working on now. Now they have to take a look at a whole new picture in the Middle East. The Gulf Arab states now appear to be becoming reawoken about the importance of being affiliated with the United States and Israel right now. When Israel was being diminished and America was withdrawing, the Gulf Arab states said, we've got to make good with Iran, and we have to make good with BRICS, and we have to make good with the global South. Now you're starting to see a revival of people saying, no, we don't. America's they got Donald Trump coming in, the man with the big stick, and we got Israel. Netanyahu is the savior. I guarantee you that unless something dramatic happens in the near future, that Israel and Iran will normalize relations on a fast track, that this is going to be one of the top priorities of a Donald Trump administration, is to sit down with the Saudis and get them to normalize relations with Israel. And all that Saudi talk about Palestine and Jerusalem will be flushed down the toilet because Arabs don't stand up for Palestine. And it's going to be about the economy, and Trump is going to bring back the Abrams Accord and bring back the reason why I keep bringing up the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor is because Benjamin Netanyahu, the same day that Biden announced it, I think September 19th of 2023, gave a presentation where he said, this is the most important thing in modern Israeli history. Because he recognized that that's what gives Israel viability. Not just to be this overfunded tool extension of America, but to become an economic hub for the Middle East, the technology hub for the Middle East. But to do that, you have to be able to interface with the Middle East. And because of Sinwar in Gaza, Israel was being isolated. There was the end of Israel. Israel was going to collapse. And now Israel is victorious. The Arab nations are going to betray each other one more time. And it's putting the Palestinians in a horrible position. Everything Sinwar fought for, all the sacrifices made by those heroic people of Gaza, their deaths will be in vain, because the only way you could even think about rationalizing the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza is to say, because of their sacrifice, there will be a free Palestinian state, a Palestinian state built on the sacrifice of these people. But now that sacrifice will have been in vain, because how do you get, and it's a challenge I'll put to the Palestinians, how do you get to a Palestinian state now? Tell me the road. I had a road. I could articulate a road. I could say this was going to happen. I could even come up with a relative timeline. And most people agreed with it. Israelis agreed with it. That's the thing I'm trying to tell people. This isn't just me making stuff up out of thin air. Israelis agreed with it. They realized that they were dying. And with their death comes the possibility of not just a dual state solution, but a singularity known as Palestine. Now, for all the people out there cheering about, let's forget your applause for a second. I just want to ask the Palestinians, how do you get to a Palestinian state now? Please tell me how. Please tell me what you think I can do to help you. Tell Sabby what she can do to help you. Please tell me. And please tell me it's got to be more than just us sitting there, talking about the horrors of Gaza. No. I want to path the Palestinian statehood right now. I want you to tell me how we get from where we are right now to a Palestinian state. And you can't.
Well, that'll have to be a question for the next time, because that's a good question. That's a good way to sum this up. Scott, thank you so much for your time and your energy. And Scott, where can people follow you? I know you just had like a anti-war event. Are there any other?
Not just an anti-war event, anti-nuclear war event. Yeah, I mean, war is war. Nuclear war kills us all. And so the idea was to try and stop it. And we actually had good success. But scottritter.com is the website. If you go there, you'll find all the information about what we've been doing on the anti-nuclear war front and things of that nature.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Scott Ritter again we're talking about Syria, talking about Gaza, and where do we go from here? So Scott is a plethora of information. I think my laptop is crooked. Okay, that helps me so much. A plethora of information. Definitely check that out from the beginning if you haven't had a chance to do so, or you can wait for the clip when I do the clip for that interview. We have 5 news stories that I do want to get into tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And I think you're going to find them rather interesting. If you're just joining, I said the theme for tonight is It's All Coming Out. All different types of information that you may have been waiting to hear or you wanted to hear. And so that's what we're diving into tonight. I'm going to go to the comments here in the chat, and then we'll dive into our next news story. So, hey. All right. Mark, Sabs, do you remember Loverboy working for The Weeknd? That sounds like it would be one of you. Yes. How did you know that, Mark? That's on my my workout playlist. Everybody's working for The Weeknd. Everybody wants a second chance. You want a piece of my heart. See, you started it, Mark. Shout out to KD for becoming a Sabby member. Give KD a big whoop whoop. Thank you, Pranakasha. Super duper chat. Thank you so much. Thank you, M. Saleh. Say, Sabby, please debate Candace. Please ask her via X. Love your show and like your vibes. God bless you, Sabby. So she does not follow me on X. That's why I said, like, I know you guys want this conversation to happen, but she doesn't follow me on X, so I don't have a way to I can't like DM or anything like that. So if you know another way to reach her, let me know. Thank you, Marcus. Domestic politics is geopolitics. Jury nullification for Luigi. No crime has been committed. Thank you, Pranakasha. I spent 8 years in the Washington Air National Guard. Interesting. Welcome. What is this? Hosts be winning? Hose be winning? Hose be winning, I tell you. Vet here, Mr. Ritter isn't lying. Nothing was worse than receiving extension orders. Shout out to Marcus. Thank you. Jury notification for Luigi equals strategic defeat. Thank you for this one as well. Everything is connected. Domestic equals geopolitics. Thank you, La Calma. Scott is the man. Thank you, Gamble. And boy, didn't we reclassified Ameridians? Reclassified Ameridians. See the affectations of Jeffersonian democracy between 1790 and the 1800s. Do your genealogy, fam. Interesting. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Bose Kim Music, who's been a member for 1 month. Don't talk down to Palestinians. This is out of their /Syrian control. What's happening to them and others in Syria is because of the US/West Israel. Thank you, Marvin. Scott, Hamas /Hez has connection with HTS team ? I don't even know if they had connection per se, but what I will say is that they did post a statement where they were, it was a celebratory statement. You can see that on X, by the way, if you follow. Thank you, Kinman. As Scott just demonstrated, there is no hope. I don't know. I'd like to think there is some type of hope around this. We'll have to wait and see what happens, guys. Thank you, Gamble. Ptolemaic, Egypt, Romans, Saracens, the Crusades, Spanish conquest, French and British colonialism, Berlin Conference, Ball 4. See a thread there. Thank you. And thank you for the super sticker, James Starks. All right. I'll get those comments on Rumble, Eric. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rumble, JVB. Salute to Scott, a real American personally living up to the ideal. And thank you, Dave Burt. Thank you, Scott Ritter and Sabby Sabs. You are welcome. Welcome. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't done so, please go ahead and smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we're going to dive into our next story here. So I know a lot of you, many of you have been wondering about the state of Luigi Mangione. What is happening with that case? So I do have an update about the Luigi case, as well as how are viewers, like how is the public in the US viewing Luigi? Like what is their perception about Luigi? And I mean like man on the street vibes. And then how is the media? What is their perception of Luigi? And you're going to see a difference. You're going to see how the public feels about him. And then you're going to see how the women of The View feel about Luigi. And I think you're going to see a difference here. And we're going to point out some of the hypocrisy about the healthcare system and the way that people chose to ignore a real solution to this. So the first update that we have is that the NYPD is claiming that there are now fingerprints that match Luigi's fingerprints that have been found at the scene. They are also saying that the shell casings match the gun that they found on him. Let's get started with this clip here, ladies and gentlemen, from ABC News.
The NYPD commissioner now saying that the gun found on Luigi Mangione matches shell casings found at the scene where United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was murdered. The 26-year-old suspect is being held right now in a Pennsylvania jail cell, fighting extradition to New York. Investigators collecting clues for a possible motive, looking at Mangione's writings and fingerprints found on items near the shooting scene in Manhattan. Our Phil Lipoff joins us now with all the latest details. All right, what do we know about the gun, Phil?
Well, we know that the NYPD was able to get it back from Pennsylvania to the crime lab here in New York. And this is a big piece of evidence, Akira. Up until now, the evidence that had been piling up, the video, the items that were found on Mangione in Pennsylvania when he was found at that McDonald's were largely circumstantial up until today. Now they have matched fingerprints on a bottle and a phone found near the crime scene to Mangione's fingerprints, and just within the last half hour or so, we got word from the New York police commissioner that the gun that was taken from Mangione when he was found in that McDonald's has been flown back here to New York and matched to the 3 shell casings that they found at the murder scene.
So we mentioned that Mangione is fighting extradition to New York. What are the next steps in the legal process here?
The next step will be an extradition hearing, and from speaking to legal experts, the bar in an extradition hearing is relatively low. You have to prove that this is the person you're looking for, and you have probable cause to bring him back. Now, I spoke to ABC contributor Brian Buckmeyer, and he said to me, when you have evidence like this, fingerprint evidence, and a gun matching shell casings at a crime scene, with the bar being so low, it appears he will be brought back here to New York. We don't know that yet. Next step is a hearing.
So one of the things that I want to add here is that Luigi's lawyer says to keep an open mind. So just FYI, he's been doing a number of interviews if you haven't seen any of those. What is really weird to me, again, I told you this case makes no sense to me. And I'm someone that has watched a lot of true crime, okay? You can ask my friends. Like they'll tell you, like, I'm really into like the true crime documentaries, like who done it or did they do it? And what doesn't make any sense to me is that, so let me get this straight. So he took the book bag, but left a water bottle. Like this guy again is incredibly smart. Like from what I understand, incredibly smart kid. I just don't understand like some of these mistakes that have been made. It does not feel right to me. But they are saying that his fingerprints do match the scene. They found the fingerprints on a water bottle. I don't know why he would have left a water bottle. Like, I just don't, these things don't add up to me. So that's just my take. But his lawyer is saying to keep an open mind there. But now they are having even more evidence to link him to that particular crime in New York that day. What is the public's perception about this, though? And I wanted you to see something. You might be surprised by this. It appears there was an interview that News Nation, they were reporting out on the field outside of that facility in Pennsylvania. And apparently you can hear inmates yelling from outside, I guess the courtyard or whatever, saying free Luigi, and that Luigi's conditions are not good. So, you know, Luigi apparently is in his own, I guess, like holding cell from what I remember. And the prisoners seem to be on his side. Listen to this.
Luigi's conditions suck. Free Luigi.
This was just from a few hours ago, and here they are, 10 o'clock as promised. They said earlier today, tell Ashley Banfield that Luigi is watching at 10 o'clock. I mean, obviously, you know, that's just a hard roast at this point because they're not near Luigi in any way.
Can I just ask the guys, if they can hear me right now, to answer yes or no very loud? Does Luigi have television in his single cell?
No.
Unreal. They said no, right? Obviously, we have a little bit of a delay, but they're getting. Yeah, they're getting the questions, and they're giving us the answers. So Luigi does not have. Wow, this is quite something. This is the strangest interview I've ever conducted.
Me too, Ashley. You know, according to the Department of Corrections, he's got his own solitary cell. It's not solitary confinement, but he's by himself. It's not dorm style. I'm not sure exactly what those guys got going on in terms of a living situation. It sounds like they're all clustered together. Isn't it interesting to see what accommodations that they have? They got their own light switches. They're obviously watching TV
They're all doing
past
it.
any sort of 10 o'clock curfew, you know. Yep, they're
Oh my
doing this
gosh,
for you.
look at
They're
this,
watching
Alex.
News Nation at this very moment.
Yeah. So it appears that Luigi, I guess, is getting the support of his fellow cellmates. And it's crazy that he's in solitary confinement, because I have never approved of solitary confinement. I think it's inhumane. And I think it's meant to drive you, honestly, mentally ill. I think it's meant to drive people crazy. But his lawyer, I want you to hear what his lawyer had to say here. There have been a number of people that have been reaching out to offer to pay for Luigi's bills. Listen to this and listen to his response to Caitlin Clark's question about that here.
You were retained today. One big question that everyone has is, are you being paid by his family to represent him?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that.
Well, can you say that it's not his family who is asking you to retain him, or to retaining you to represent him?
I'm not going to comment on. I'm not going to comment on that. That's I've been retained. I'm not court appointed. I've been retained, and that's all I can tell you.
We had seen reports earlier
So
that there was, people were inundating you with offers to help pay for his legal bills.
Oh, pause. I'm so sorry. Did I say Caitlin Clark? Why am I? Caitlin, you guys know what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
That accurate?
I have received some emails. I have not seen them personally, but my understanding from my staff is people are doing that.
That people are reaching out to you and offering to help pay for his legal bills.
That's correct.
Would you accept those offers? I mean, I imagine you maybe have, I don't know, have you ever gotten that before?
Nah, to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't.
He reminds me of My Cousin Vinny. If you guys have ever seen the movie My Cousin Vinny, please watch that movie. He reminds me of Vinny, that is, Joe Pesci's character in the movie, where he's just kind of like, he's like, nah, I don't know. Are you telling me that the laws of physics do not work in your kitchen?
Why do you think you would not accept that?
I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't feel comfortable about that. So I don't know. I haven't given that much thought, but I'm not looking. Obviously my client appreciates the support that he has, but I don't know. I'd have to look in, but it just doesn't sit right with me, really.
Why do you think they're offering?
I don't know. People, you talk about, the Supreme Court says, all these rich billionaires can give all kind of money to candidates, and that's free speech. So maybe these people are exercising their right to free speech and saying that's the way they're supporting my client.
Oh, and that was like a mic drop moment there, if I ever heard one, because he used that opportunity to criticize the billionaire class. Like he just kind of slid that in there. It's like, well, I don't know. The Supreme Court says that such and such. Bam. There it is. There it is. And look at the look on Caitlin's face. She's like, uh-oh, he said the B word. He said the B word.
You noted there that you said he appreciates the support that he's getting. Did he acknowledge that when you had a conversation with him earlier about how we have seen this intense public interest in him himself?
Yeah, unfortunately, Caitlin, I can't get into anything that my client and I talk about. So by law, I'm not permitted to reveal anything that's attorney-client privilege in any conversation that occurs between he and I is simply that.
Should we play it again? People keep telling me to play that part again. So yeah, let's do it.
Obviously my client appreciates the support that he has, but I don't know. I'd have to look in, but it just doesn't sit right with me, really.
Why do you think they're offering?
I don't know. People, you talk about, the Supreme Court says, all these rich billionaires can give all kind of money to candidates, and that's free speech. So maybe these people are exercising their right to free speech and saying that's the way they're supporting my client.
Hey! Billionaire moment! Dance with me! Dance with me! Mic drop moment! Dance with me! We had to do it, guys. I'm sorry, but we did. We had to do it. That was a mic drop moment there, okay? So very well said. They're very, obviously there's only so much that he can discuss about it. He can't give into obviously too many details. But I want you to see something else as well, because on the show, again, I gotta be very clear here. We do not advocate for people to go out and do what Luigi did. That being said, he has everyone in the country right now talking about the corrupt healthcare system, so much to the point that somebody in New York put up wanted posters for healthcare CEOs. Check this out.
Do you see this? Do you see this? Deny, defend, oppose is the bottom of it.
You see what this tells me right here? People are starting to see that the billionaire class, the corporations, it's, again, I told you, it's top bottom. There's been more and less focus on left, right, and people focusing on top, bottom. The conversations that a lot of people are having right now about the healthcare system, it's top, bottom. And here's the thing. Health insurance companies don't discriminate against you based on your political ideology. There's people who are conservatives that have been screwed over by health insurance companies, that have gone into debt, that have gone into bankruptcy because they can't pay like the medical bills, or because they've spent so much in treatment, particularly when it applies to cases like cancer. That's where I've seen and I've heard about these stories before, where people have been diagnosed with cancer and they go into bankruptcy because they can't afford the treatments, and the insurance company either doesn't want to pay or can only pay so much. So they don't care if you're conservative or if you're a Democrat. They care about money. That's what they care about. So they love to deny these claims. They don't really care about our well-being. Now, that's what you see from the general public. That's the general public consensus. And I want to show you the difference when we get into the way that The View chose to talk about this. Corporate media. I want to show you how they are discussing the situation. Check this out.
Strong and polarizing reactions continue over the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Yesterday, alleged assassin Luigi Mangione had this outburst while he was being taken into a Pennsylvania court. Take a look.
That's completely out of touch and it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the American experience.
And there's been widespread condemnation of the killing. And then there's supporters of Mangione, as well as an outpouring of people posting healthcare horror stories about claims of being denied. Now, the vast majority of Americans want the healthcare industry fixed. But I got to tell you, murdering someone is not the way to do it. Mm-hmm. So what is this? I guess people are thinking of it as a lack of empathy over this murder. What does it say about where people's heads are at?
I don't know if it's a lack of empathy or people are outraged by the healthcare system in this country. It doesn't justify killing anybody, to me, anyway. Yeah. I think it's a very stupid idea, bad idea. But, you know, when you read the, Murder's bad. Murder bad. Voting good, murder bad.
Yeah,
okay, let's get that straight. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people go bankrupt. 500,000 people go bankrupt in this country every year because of healthcare issues. It doesn't seem like an American idea that only rich people can afford to be sick. And yet it is an American idea.
Yeah, but some people
Pause. Joy Behar, who supported Bernie Sanders in 2016, apparently must have got a bug in her ear from producers because come 2020, she was against Bernie Sanders' campaign and actually made fun of him when he wasn't on The View, and they kind of laughed at his face when he came onto The View in 2020. Bernie Sanders was the most popular candidate that really was pushing the Medicare for All issue. Now, all these years later, they want to sit here and talk about how many people go bankrupt during, because of the health insurance in this country, yada, yada. Bernie Sanders sat there on The View and told you this multiple times, and he wasn't the only one. And you guys shunned him. You guys looked away because that's what the producers wanted you to do. So don't like Joy and the rest of you, don't try to sit back there now and pretend like you care about people going bankrupt because of the healthcare system in this country. You had one candidate who won multiple states in the Dem primary in 2016, and the DNC gave some of those states to Hillary Clinton, took those wins from Bernie Sanders and gave some of those wins to Hillary Clinton. And you guys went along with, we got to be for her. Let's elect Hillary Clinton, who did not run on Medicare for All, who does not approve of that system. So all of a sudden now you guys want to come forward and pretend like you care about the health of Americans. But when there was multiple opportunities for you to jump on board with that and support that cause, not only did you push back against it, you said, oh no, you might get Trump. No, this is the system that we have, but this is how it's always been. So don't buy into this, ladies and gentlemen.
If you don't feel a little bit of glee or that you're out of touch or you don't understand, and I'm sorry, but at the lowest low, this is not the way I was raised. My heart is not allow for this. Check in with your minister, check in with your parents, check in with someone, because if you in any way feel this was the answer, you need to look at yourself. And that's
are ministers paying healthcare bills? Anyone let me know. Is anyone's pastor offering to pay for these treatments and these healthcare bills? Holla at me.
This guy had every privilege in the world. I've said this before. His grandfather was frustrated with things. He didn't like government bureaucracy. He was a bricklayer, an immigrant, and had 10 kids. And guess what he did? He created nursing homes. He didn't like the country club in their.
Let's pause here for a second. Here we go with the grandfather did this. So not thinking about the fact that during that time, that was a different economic time in this country. Back then, you could have 10 kids and still make something of your life. You can't do that today unless you already have money or you come from money. So let's talk about that. So now the argument is, if you were upset with the way that things were, look at what the grandfather did. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just try to make something for yourself and your life. And that's what drives me crazy. Let's go back to what grandpa did, knowing damn well that wages have not adjusted for inflation in this country. Yes, he did come from a family that was pretty privileged, but from what I understand, it's not like his family members were billionaires, but he did come from privilege. Just because he comes from privilege doesn't mean he doesn't doesn't see the flaws within the system. So let's stop with the grandfather saw things were bad and he came with no or little money and he decided to start his own company. She knows damn well that's almost near impossible for most people growing up in poverty to do today. So let's stop it with that talking point. She goes on here.
Areas he had money and wealth because they didn't treat him right. So he opened his own country club. This guy is
open his own country club, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a problem with the healthcare system and the way that you're treated, save up your pennies and open your own country club. Dun, dun, dun. Courtesy of Sarah from The View.
Fighting on the back of that family and all they built. He could have gone in to a system and done something, and he's trying to be a revolutionary. This is a civilized country. We don't do this. And by
pause. This is not a civilized country, and we do those things. Two things we're going to break down here. This, for her to say this is not what we do in this country, what the hell are you talking about? America is one of the most violent countries in the world. Are we serious? We have one of the highest rates of depression, of mental illness. We have one of the highest rates of violence. We have the highest rate of mass school shootings in this country when you compare us to other countries in the world. What the hell do you mean this is not who we are? That is always what this country has been. America was born out of violence. What is she talking about? Two, the part where she said if he didn't like it, he should have tried to change it inside the system. There have been multiple candidates that have come onto your show, Sarah, that tried to change it from inside the system, and they ultimately failed because of Democrat leadership and because big money controls the party. Not only did they fail in doing that because of big money interests, but you and your co-host sat around that table and avidly pushed back against those candidates for trying to change the system. You pushed back against Bernie Sanders. You said, you're going to take our health care away when he came onto The View. All of a sudden, they pretend like we don't remember these things. I remember. What does South Park say? I remember. Some of us do remember. You guys pushed back on these people. And you only embraced AOC after she came on and said, that's Mama Bear right there. Once she got in line, you liked her too. But every one of those candidates that came onto The View and said, we need to get some type of Medicare for all system. We need universal health care. You guys dogged them out and treated them like trash. So how are you supposed to change things from inside a system when not only is big money interest against you, but the corporate media, such as yourself, is also against you? They seem to think that we forget these things. I don't forget these things. They're seriously sitting up here and pretending like nobody tried to do this from inside the system.
By the way, this does not change things for everyone that's sitting there. They're going to put one more pawn in there. If you want to change it, and I understand the outrage. There are people sitting in emergency rooms with 1-year-olds, people that can't get beds for kids with disabilities. The list goes on and on. I am not.
She understands the outrage after she had to read those statistics off of her sheet of paper because she doesn't have that experience. These women make a lot of money. You don't understand the outrage. You understand what you just read off that sheet of paper. But personally, you've never had that experience. Some of us have. I'm one of those people that have. I had medical debt. I know what it's like to have medical debt. It took me 3 years to pay off it. 3 years to pay off medical debt. And that is because at the time, my job did not have health insurance, didn't offer it. That's right. Not everybody offers health insurance. This was also during 2008, during the housing crisis. It took me 3 years to pay off medical debt. Sarah does not know. Sarah does not understand. Sarah does not live the way that a lot of us have had to live. And most of those women sitting around that table, they haven't had to do that. Joy sat up there and mentioned one time herself. She said, when I went to college in New York, I went to city school in New York, we paid $50. So like I said, they're out of touch. You are out of touch, Sarah. They're out of touch and they don't understand what it's like to be working class today.
Out of touch with the reasons. This is never the answer. Who's next? What elite is next?
It's a microcosm of what's wrong with a lot of our society, and I think a lot of it's driven by the internet and the digital space, which is, this is a person, he's good looking. Oh no, we're so surprised good-looking people commit crimes. He's coming out.
Ted Bundy.
Yeah, exactly. He's coming out in favor of a cause that I think people generally agree the American health care system is not great. He's not offering a solution. He had a 2-page manifesto. There wasn't a single line, as I read it, that explained, okay, so what would you like to do? What would be better than the system that we live in? And then there's this desire to cheerlead and kind of create like fan lore around this person rather than address, okay, the one takeaway we should have, well, the two, this is wrong, and now there are going to be kids who don't have a father on Christmas Day because this.
I have to stop her there. This is Alyssa Farah. You know, a lot of people may not remember this, but Alyssa Farah was on Rising. This was during that transition period when Crystal and Sagar were about to leave The Hill Rising. She was on Rising there, and she was very nervous, and somehow she managed to make her way from Rising for that 1 week over to The View. Don't ask me, but these things happen. What Alyssa Farah tends to leave out here is she is blaming Luigi for not coming up with a solution, but the solutions have been presented to you multiple times. You just don't want to accept it. The solution is universal health care in this country, like other standard countries in the world have. That's the solution. And the fact that you sit here and pretend as though this has never been brought to you, and she's going to tell on herself, watch this. Hold on.
CEO was killed, but secondarily that we all agree there may be a collective problem, but what are we doing to try to fix it? And I'm so frustrated that the discourse seems to be more around like celebrating him and excitement or like anger over the system, but not talking about solutions. And even, and this is not, I want to be careful on how I say this, Bernie Sanders and Senator Warren put out statements decrying the ills of the healthcare system. Yeah. But they're part of the system. I think that we need to hold those who are in places of power who can make changes more accountable than to actually do so.
So this is where she tells on herself. So she knows that Bernie Sanders advocates for Medicare for all. So why is she telling you there is no system? What is the solution? I'd like to hear the solution. Then she goes on to mention Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So she knows. You don't spend a whole week on Rising. After Crystal and Sagar during that time talked about Medicare for all over and over and over and over. Now all of a sudden you want to pretend like you don't know about a solution. You knew about the solution. So there's that. But as much criticism as I have for Bernie Sanders today, Bernie Sanders himself as a senator can't make all the senators vote for Medicare for all. What he could have done, though, was that he could have organized his base to withhold their vote for Joe Biden without Medicare for all. He could have done that. But now she's saying hold them accountable when the real people that need to be held accountable are the politicians that are against it, the politicians that did not sign on for it. Bernie Sanders did write a whole damn bill about Medicare for all. Why is she pretending like he's the one that doesn't want it? It's the other politicians that don't want it. And more importantly, it's the health insurance companies that don't want it, and they own the politicians. So these women, they try to pretend like they don't know. They try to pretend like they're dumb or ignorant to the situation, but they're not.
Well, why go after two liberals?
Let's because they put out statements.
Wait, hold on. Let Sunny get in here.
I mean, I agree with mostly everything that's been said. I mean, we know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do. So there are a lot of problems with it. But the notion that we are in a violent country, this country was built on violence. We're a very violent country. And it's just undeniable that that's the case. And so I'm not, unfortunately, surprised that people are celebrating the use of violence. I'm not surprised that this young man thought that change could be accomplished through violence. 1 in 4 Americans say violence against government sometimes is justified. And today, in 2024, 1 in 10 Americans say violence is justified right now against corporations and government.
That's very scary.
Those are just.
And even though I don't think he might change something, he might have laid out a plan for a copycat. That's what I see.
Yeah. And really, I mean, the thing to also.
Yeah, I think it's more scary that health insurance companies continue to kill people every day.
Keep in mind is, yes, solutions are needed, and they need to be recognized when they're offered. Because we've had lots of solutions, lots of suggestions. We got Obamacare, then we got to fight for it. People who don't have insurance have to fight to find a way. We have solutions. We just don't do them. It's like
Whoopi has no idea what she's talking about because Obamacare was not a solution. Obamacare was, maybe like a baby step here, but the solution is to give everyone health care. The solution is Medicare for all, universal health care, whatever you want to call it. It's like what they have in the UK, what they have in some of these other countries like Norway and Denmark, etc. That's the solution. Obamacare actually made things worse for some people because it was more expensive than they expected it to be. I had a friend that was on Obamacare and they couldn't even afford that. So Obamacare did not fix the problem, which is to give everybody health care. It increased it some. If that was a solution, honey, why did Joe Biden run on we're going to expand Obamacare, which he didn't do that? But you get what I'm saying? So that wasn't a solution. So what she's trying to do is still trying to downplay how cruel the healthcare system is by saying, well, the solution was Obamacare, when you damn sure know that was not the solution when these health insurance companies continue to send people to their death by not paying for their claims, you're paying into it. All of us pay for it. This comes out of your paycheck every month. And then these health insurance companies just push back and say, no, we're not going to help you. No, you're not going to get, sorry, this isn't covered. It's covered this year, but next year it's not going to be covered. People who need life-saving medication like EpiPens. Do you know how much an EpiPen can cost if it's not $500? So this in itself just shows you again the class issue. And although, yes, Luigi may have come from a pretty wealthy background, even he was smart enough to realize what was happening with the healthcare system in this country, while these women sit around a table and pretend not to realize it. All the politicians that have come onto that show and have had this in your face and you push back against it, you didn't want to hear it. You guys were sitting up there kissing Joe Biden's ass, who had no real plan for health care for people in this country. Let me expand Obamacare. People tend to forget this, but even if you go back to probably one of my favorite shows, which was Breaking Bad, even Breaking Bad had to deal with the healthcare industry. Let's all remember what happened to Walter White. Walter White was diagnosed with lung cancer. Everybody remember this? This is what prompted him to go start selling drugs. Not advocating for that, by the way. But this is what prompted him to doing that. We've seen it a number of times. If you saw the movie John Q, that was about the healthcare industry. There's been a number of times, even Hollywood tried to tell you how horrible the health insurance industry is in this country. And for these women to sit up here and pretend like they just heard about this yesterday, it's insane. It's absurd. So one thing I can say that has come from all of this so far is that everyone is talking about the healthcare industry. Everybody, whether it's independent or corporate media. And it shouldn't have to come to this. It shouldn't have come to, what Luigi did to get everybody to talk about how crazy this health insurance system is in this country and how to fix it. What a mess. What a mess. I had to, with the disclaimer, I had to, because All right, let's go to some of the comments. Thank you, Skylar. Ritter wasn't getting Palestinians a state. How dare he judge how oppressed folks fight oppressors? And he's more Gazan than Hamas, white liberal BS. Well, I told Scott, I said I would not, I hope you don't approach them that way. Adonia says, I think I figured it out. Luigi is not a psychopath and he wanted to be caught. Some people are saying that. Some people think that he wanted to be caught. Thank you, New York. If they found a water bottle, the water bottle has a barcode that shows where it was purchased and who purchased it. If they really want this, interesting. Thank you, Samar. Why are they leaking all the evidence before they have the trial? I've seen them do that before with other cases as well, but that's a good question. Thanks, Teresa. The only thing Luigi didn't leave behind was the map to the lost city of Atlantis. Suspicious. Thank you, Ravina, who's been a member for 17 months. I love you, Sab. I missed the beat at the beginning. Late. Thank you. Love ya and welcome. The protocol says, Sabby, when are you going on George Galloway and Piers Morgan's show? I've been on George Galloway's show a couple of times. I think it's been on a Sunday when I've been on there. I think so. I've never been invited on the Piers Morgan show. He probably wouldn't invite me, though. He usually invites people on that are public figures. Thank you, Kinman. Mario framed Luigi. And thank you for this one. Caitlin Collins is a stone cold fox. You got a crush on Caitlin Kinman? You got a little crush? Crushy crush. Thank you, Salt and Pepper. Grandpa could pay a doctor bill with a chicken. And thank you, Kinman. The blonde bird on The View is sure dumb. Thank you, Jasmine. These women live in bubbles of excess and could care less about the violent reality of American life or its history. They complain that Luigi was wrong, but what do they do to fight this system? Nothing. They support it. There it is. Go ahead and smash that like button for me, guys. Thank you so much. And we're moving on to our next story. This is a fun one. A fun one. So there appears to be a weird rift that's happening with TYT. I don't understand, but it seems as though that they are deciding to go in a different direction. Now, for those of us that watched TYT years ago, they were known as the home of progressives. Now are they deciding, I guess, to take a different course? Now, this is after Kamala Harris lost the presidential election and also lost the popular vote. It is almost as if that sent a message to them and they want to move in a different direction. Now, it was just over a year ago, I actually predicted that TYT would move in this way. And I said that because Anna was coming forward about a year ago about how she was upset with some of the positions on the left, more so the crime issue. She was very vocal about that and homelessness as well. So I had made a prediction back then that I think they're going to try to do this angle. And it appears that I was right. Now, apparently, a TYT contributor has announced that he is going to quit because of the shift that they are deciding to make. What does that shift look like? Let's take a look. One of it is Anna, who was recently on Glenn Beck's show. Glenn Beck is right-wing media. He's a part of Blaze TV. This is one example, and then we'll show you one with Jane.
In reality, we're talking about individuals whose politics is mostly based on, some fringe issue or some cultural issue that they have. It's not just that they care about that issue. It's that they've taken that issue and they've made it part of their identity, the core of who they are. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like what you would expect from religious zealots. And so there's a fundamentalism involved in the way that they treat these issues, and there's no room to negotiate. There's no room to maybe consider the thoughts and concerns of other individuals. And so as they become more and more kind of like authoritarian in what they demand, they are pushing people away. And there are some issues in which the rights of one group might actually end up conflicting with the rights of another group, depending on what type of legislation you're pursuing. And so, of course, this has come up with the trans issue. And I've always been supportive of the transgender community, but when the rights of transgender people, particularly transgender women, start to cause some tension with the rights and freedoms of women or the perceived safety of women, well, let's have a conversation and avoid assuming the worst of the people who want to have that conversation, right?
So Kim Iverson, I actually should have, I should invite Kim Iverson on to get her opinion about this. Kim Iverson at one point, may have been about over a year ago, was invited to the Glenn Beck show in person, just like Anna is there in person right now. And Kim Iverson posted about it on Twitter, and she was telling everybody like just how much money that they have on the right. I mean, look at his studio, right? Like, look at this, like, she was like, whoa, like a whole big difference. coming from, like the left and all that kind of stuff. And I don't even know if Kim considers herself to be left anymore or whatever she labels herself as. But I know she was talking about how enticing it can be when you're there in person and you see all that, right? So they do have a lot more money on the right. But this is one of the examples. Anna has been going on a lot of right-wing media podcasts, and I'm not one to tell someone that you should only talk to people that have the same political ideology as you, because I don't believe that. I don't think we really get anywhere by doing that. But what I do think is interesting is that we're seeing Anna and Cenk Uygur go on all these right-wing podcasts, but if you're willing to cross that bridge with people that support Trump and that are, call themselves MAGA or whatever, why aren't you willing to cross that bridge with people who are to the left of you? And that is something that I have noticed about TYT. They don't seem to be willing to cross that bridge with people who are to their left, like Marxists, socialists, people who identify as communists. I don't see them entertained with those individuals. In fact, I can see them sometimes on Twitter, take shots at people that have that political ideology. And my response to that my guess would be, is because there's no profit there, because the reality is there's more money on the right. So them entertaining, let's say someone like Midwestern Marx, for example, who they identify as Marxist, Leninist, I think that would not be beneficial for the Young Turks because, again, like I said, the further left you go, the less money there is there. So further to the right means more money for them. And I think this is a way that TYT is trying to increase their subscriber base. Granted, it can cost them subscribers as well, but I think they could replace those subscribers with the conservative ones. So as I predicted over a year ago, I believe that TYT was going to move more in a direction similar to the Hill Rising and Breaking Points to build up their brand. Now, don't get me wrong, they have over 6 million subscribers, but I think when you're looking at the views, and I mean, they've been doing this for a long time. When you look at the views, sometimes like Breaking Points will get more views on videos than they do, those types of things. And I think people have just become tired of just trying still to support progressive strategy through the Democratic Party. And I think they've seen that writing on the wall as well, right? So another example here that you'll see is Cenk Uygur on the PBD podcast, where, Patrick is asking him, are you now Republican? Listen to this.
So let's get right into it. Cenk, are you now a Republican?
Okay, so a lot of people on the left have that theory. The definitive answer is no. So look, I've been a populist all along, and what's fascinating to me is how much politics in America has changed. Because the left-wing populists, like the Bernie Sanders type of guys, have been standing a post waiting for our right flank to appear at some point. Because giant things like getting money out of politics, you cannot do alone. The left wing can't do it alone. The right wing can't do it alone. The only way to fix it is an amendment, because you got to go above the Supreme Court. You need 3/4 of the states. So for me, I've always thought, if we don't get united, we're never going to beat the establishment. And the establishment has been my enemy forever and ever and ever. And I wish we had beaten them, through Bernie in 2016 or 2020. And I'm not saying that they're knocked out. I mean, the establishment is gigantic. They've got billions and trillions of dollars, and they're going to make a huge comeback in the 2028 primaries. But on the Republican side, they've largely been defeated. And so here's what my left-wing friends don't understand. They think you guys are all MAGA, and MAGA means it's a cult, and you're never going to disagree with Trump. You're never going to disagree with each other, and that you are like their father's Republicans. But you're not their father's Republicans. And so our side, I've been trying to get them to realize that Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, all these folks that take the money, they're not on your side. They're on the establishment side, right? And for you guys on the right, when I used to debate you, and I don't mean you guys in specific, I mean in general, all I would get is wall-to-wall talking points. Oh, Mitch McConnell knows what he's doing. Oh, John Cornyn is the best. Oh, George Bush, Dick Cheney, et cetera. And we've been around forever. We're the longest-running show in internet history, right? We're the first YouTube partner channel ever. That makes me like the original YouTuber, right? Oh, wow. And so So I battled the Cheneys. I battled all those guys in the Bush years, right? And then I hit Obama from the left, and people got super mad. I mean, that's part of the reason why I had the huge blowout with MSNBC, and I left MSNBC because they didn't want me to hit Obama, and they didn't want me to hit the Democrats. So I've been doing that from day one. And guys, today, I think that, we could do something historic. I think that we could actually unite the left flank and the right flank. And I've got a model for how to do that, and I want to run it by you guys. I've got a couple.
Pause. Okay, so here's my take on this. When other commentators or journalists suggested this a couple of years ago about pushing back on the Ukraine war, or whether it was, fighting against, against Israel with the Gaza issue. When other people did this, it was Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian who came out against them and called them right-wing grifters and, you guys are just trying to grift for a MAGA base and all this kind of things. But now that they're doing it, now it's supposed to be okay. Because see, these are the same people who sat there pointing fingers at those of us that wanted to do marches when we did the marches for Medicare for all. By the way, they were contacted too. They wouldn't even let the organizers come onto the show to announce the event, the day of action. But they cared so much about Medicare for all. And they're like, no, that's not the way it's going to get done. So they've always been like, I feel like the grassroots has always been a step ahead of TYT, but TYT was always just trying to catch up and doing what they thought would work well. I don't know if it's just with the viewers, but with their access, the access that they have to people, right? So that was something that I noticed as well. They weren't really trying to move, in that direction. Now, all of a sudden, after they've called MAGA people, all these different names, dumb, stupid, pathetic, racist, tyrants, now it's okay to want to work alongside those same people that you guys shunned us for trying to have a march for Medicare for all, across the country 4 years ago. So I think that they owe an apology to people. I really think that they do. So TYT, they were the ones that really started this progressive media. They were the big name, back in the day. And a lot of these other channels went through TYT before they became big standout channels on their own. So even David Pakman's show at one point was an affiliate of TYT. Kyle Kulinski's Secular Talk was an affiliate of TYT. So a lot of them went through that. Humanist Report was an affiliate of TYT. So the rule was or the unspoken rule was you would start with TYT. That's where you were supposed to start. They would reach out to you and say, I think you're doing a good job. And then, you kind of branch out on your own. So the problem with that, though, became that TYT in some way, shape, or form became gatekeepers. And so when there were those of us in independent media that wanted to do things, if the TYT side of the aisle didn't get the run through first, we were actually told that we didn't go through the proper channels. When we hosted a general strike summit over at RBN, people were yelling at us. This is before it even happened. People were yelling at us. We got attacked by Hassan Piker, who I didn't even know he knew who we were at the time, saying you didn't go through the proper channels. And this is what they were talking about. So this idea that, how can they make fun of Dave Rubin now? How can they make fun of all the people who left TYT and went over to the right? How can they make fun of those people?
Rules for the internet that I want to run by you guys. Rules sound bad, right? But hold on, I think you're going to like these rules. And then I want to see, hey, is there a couple of things that we can unite on right now on this show, make the show a little bit historic and say, hey, this is what the internet thinks. This is what the populists of the right and the left think. Let's go tackle the establishment and make it happen.
Okay, so before we do that, can I ask you a couple questions?
Of course.
So,
and we can pause it there. So you guys get where this is going, right? And they've been on a number of conservative shows. He's also been tweeting about this as well. But as I said, the theme is it's all coming out. You can see it in the chalkboard behind me because now a TYT contributor has come forward. I believe this was on Ben Dixon's show here. And he has some things to say about why he is done with TYT, and it's because of this move that they are making. Let's go ahead and bring in this clip here.
Also, right now, I will do no more work. I don't know why. Something just said I will do no more work with TYT though. In its current capacity, I will.
Oh wow, bro!
No more content. I will be on no more shows. It's over for me. Like something just told me I have to say that, and I need to put it on Twitter. I need to text Jink and Anna. Y'all can't call me for no more shows. I'm done with it. Yeah, in real life.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Damn, that's 100.
I tell people, past couple years I've been taking paychecks from TYT. At this moment, I feel disgusted by that, dog. I don't like where TYT is right now. TYT is starting to act like, listen, I'm telling people right now, I have not severed my relationship with TYT. I'm being a buck. So what I'm saying right now might just end that relationship.
Whoa.
No, I'm just saying what I gotta say.
It's the anniversary night, Nick. We're not doing a relationship ending tonight. I'm with my family and I'm talking to our extended family. I don't really know what's going on over there, dog. Like I don't know if they had some kind of meeting or was it the Christmas party? Shows them more, then I don't give a damn because I'm not gonna be quiet about the way that they're showing up right now. You took too How
much.
are they showing up, Mondale?
Like MAGA, like an extension of damn Trump. Like, bro,
you need to
this idea that these people ain't white supremacists, like normalizing Trump supporters as if they ain't racist, dog.
Let me pause there for a second, because this is the part where I agree with some of the things he's saying. I disagree with some of the things he's saying. I don't agree that all Trump supporters are white supremacists. So, for example, all the black people that voted for Donald Trump, they're white supremacists too. For a lot of people, it's just about economics, boo. It's just about economics for a lot of people. So I think this is another thing that I think the Democratic Party needs to like get away from. And it's not to say you can't call out racism. Obviously, I call it out often on the show. But what I'm saying is that you have to stop making these assumptions about people. The same assumptions that they made in 2016, where Hillary was calling people deplorables and all that shit, that was not going to help you win. And as long as you keep making these assumptions about people based on who they voted for, this is why people push back on the Democratic Party and say, oh, you guys are judgmental. You guys are corporatists, even though corporate on both sides. The Democrats show it a little bit more lately these past couple of days, it seems like. You know, you guys are classist. This is why they say these things. So I think it's wrong to make that assumption that everyone that supported Trump is racist.
I am not okay with this. I'm not gonna be good with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski or Jink or Anna or anybody pretending that these people aren't threatening our lives. I'm a black person first. They can keep that money for them videos. I'll go back to kissing my wife and not having to create videos in the afternoon. I don't care. It's not what I'm not comfortable. We should all be mad. That was the last beacon other than Democracy Now! And Free Speech TV.
That's right.
Talking about real progressive media. Y'all took too much money from the ethos. Y'all took too much money with too many billions of views to be doing what y'all doing right now.
Okay, let's talk about the money thing, because I think he's right about this. Remember, they took the $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg. That's not a secret. You know, Jink has talked about that before as well. But they did get a lot of money. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, like I said, it is a network, and they were trying to make it bigger, I guess, than the mainstream, like bring people over to that instead of mainstream media. So I get it. I understand, but I wouldn't have taken that money. That's just me. And I've been offered. There are people who contacted me and offered me all types of things, and I have not taken it because look at what you see what's happening. Right? This is not to say that they shouldn't invite people on from different sides of the aisle, but it does seem very cool coming from you guys after you spent all these years calling Trump supporters and MAGA people degenerates and stupid and dumb and all those types of things. And now you want to coalesce with the same people that you were name calling. And you made fun of people that were saying the same thing you're saying now a couple years ago. So to me, it looks like a money grab to me, guys. It looks like this is their way of, okay, how can we increase our subscriber count? How can we increase more money over here in our pocket? I don't know, but you can't be TYT home of the progressives and we bash Trump supporters constantly. And now you're like, okay, we're going to be okay with working alongside Trump supporters. Of course, their base was going to get upset.
So I don't know who offered you a check or which check you're trying to get. But I'm disgusted by it as a contributor and a person who helped grow Rebel HQ, another money source for y'all, to over 1 million followers, dog. I average 30 million views a year on Rebel HQ myself. None of those views join my personal YouTube channel or nothing. So the pennies that they give me is not enough to make me sell my soul. I don't know what's going on. And if y'all are
the pennies that they give him. So this almost seems like a money situation too. It sounds like he's not being paid like what he's supposed to be paid. Maybe he think he should be getting more. I don't know what they're paying him. Random says, I see a lawsuit. I wonder, it makes me sound like, he brought up the money situation. So I wonder if he's not being compensated, fairly compensated. Let's see here. Oh, let's go back. I don't know what happened with sometimes these
resource for y'all to over 1 million followers, dog. I average 30 million views a year on Rebel HQ myself.
We saw that
already. And I'm not talking about YouTube personally. I'm talking about everybody who say they part of the Squirrel Gang, the Dragon Squad. I need to know what's going on. We should be asking these questions, dog. And we shouldn't be asking these questions with questions. We should be asking these questions with the lack of subscriptions.
That's right.
That's right. In that manner, I don't give you enough to pay nobody's bill, but I subscribe at $100 a month. That's a big level from one person. When you got.
So this was something I was not aware of. Apparently, him subscribing at $100 a month. Like, I don't understand why people are doing this. Maybe someone in the chat can explain this to me, because you guys subscribe on this channel for free. Like, so I didn't realize people were subscribing, were like paid. Like, I don't know. I don't do the paid subscription thing. It's just kind of weird to me on YouTube. I don't know how they're doing that, but it sounds like he was also, paying his own money towards this.
Out of 1 billion views, I cannot spend that $100 a month to TYT. As long as they're acting as if Donald Trump followers aren't the same people who are trying to kill me and my wife. And that is not hyperbole. I live in segregated world because I'm still getting death threats. The FBI had to get involved to get me my email back because I was hacked by these people. In real life, in this cycle, I've never thought I would say thank you to an FBI agent. The FBI agent called me and was like, you're in danger. Your wife can't travel by herself. So these people, and out of love and respect for my wife, I'm obligated to do it today. I'm asking real questions. Jake, Anna, and also TYT, what are we doing?
So let me just stop it there, and then I'll get to this tweet. This person made a point in the tweet that I think is really, really, really important. Something that I do want to say here. I think that some of the Black podcasters need to go out on their own. I've been feeling this way for quite some time. I get it. TYT gave you a foot in the door, but I think at some point you need to go out on your own. I never went through TYT. I've never even spoken to Cenk Uygur or Anna Kasparian. I've never spoken to Ben Dixon, who is, hosting this conversation here, but years ago, he blocked me on Twitter. I don't even know what happened. I don't even know why I'm blocked by Ben Dixon, but I've never even spoken to this dude. So there's that. But I think that, if I get it, he signed up for one thing and now it's becoming something else. I get that. And sometimes change ain't going to be for everybody. I totally get it. Got it. Because if that's not for you, you got to pack your bags and you got to go. Because the reality is the business is not going to change to accommodate you most of the time. So if the business makes a change that you disagree with, most of the time you got to pack your bags and go, because Jake and Anna are not going to change what they're doing. They picked a decision. They're going in that direction. So totally get that. That being said, I will say that the same way that TYT chose to shun those that are part of that MAGA crowd, they also chose to shun those that are to the left of them. Like I said earlier, I do not see them engage with people who are Marxists, who are communists, people to their left, to the left of them. So it seemed like they were trying to shut out people on both sides of that. You know what I mean? Like both ends of the spectrum. Like they did not want to engage with either one of those spaces, because if that were the case, they would realize that I think they're missing a lot of intelligent voices in the space that are smaller channels, and people don't know about them because they have not made their way to appear on TYT. And I think that's very unfortunate. There's a lot of gatekeeping in this space, and I think that it keeps talented people at bay. I really do. And I think sometimes that's on purpose. You guys see, I'll bring anybody on this show. I may not always agree with you. Just because you come on here don't mean I'm going to agree with you. But there does seem to be this type of combative feeling or energy in this space, to where people feel like they got what they got and they got to hold on to their brand, and certain people they can't let come across and be a part of it, because that may bring, their audience eyes to that person as well. And it just is the weirdest thing to me. I didn't realize it until I got into this space, but there's a lot of gatekeeping. But Mondale, if you feel you got to go, pack your bags and go. I get it. And I just don't feel like Jink and Anna in the end, I think they're looking out for their bottom line. I think that this is really, what this is about. And I predicted this, like I said. Now, it even gets to the point where Dier, the Defiant, he tweeted this. He said, Jink, between this and letting Anna entertain religious fascists, I feel like y'all have turned your backs on the marginalized and your core audience. I know you won't care that I've wrote this, but in chance you do read it, but we are disappearing in you, brother. I pray y'all come back. So this guy here, black guy, said this message here to Cenk Uygur, saying you guys turned your backs on the marginalized and the core of your audience. And this is why I say, again, I encourage Black commentators that are part of these larger networks to branch out on your own and make sure you have your own voice as well. Even all of us at RBN, we have our own thing that we do as well. So I think that's incredibly important. But that was interesting that he said that. And then there's this idea of the populist right. I want to bring this in. Emma Vigilant, she's really melting down over all this too. Listen to what she has to say about the switcheroos.
That's why I just get so triggered about this right-wing populism stuff, is because they're libertarians that want to privatize everything. They make this situation worse. Stop reinforcing the narrative that they're for the people as they loot the federal government for what they can within the short period of time that they're going to be able to be in power, like Trump did the first time. There's nothing new this time. The pain is still there, but people feel like they don't know where to go because the Democratic Party did a horrible job messaging it and didn't have a transformational agenda. They ceded the anger about this country to the right, which is insane. There's no reason that Donald Trump should have won this election. He wasn't offering anything on healthcare, anything on the economy. He's admitting now that his tariffs could cause prices to go up. But by default, he wins because they represented the status quo and people go, this sucks for me. If you're not speaking to that rage right now, you are setting us up for a complete backslide into fascism. So let's not pretend that there's any way that we can meet with the Republicans on this. It's not going to happen. We need to be in opposition to these folks and making it clear where they stand. Let's not do the work of obscuring what the Republican Party is really about, which is about privatizing our system even more. And it's the privatization that has led to this immiseration.
So these people, like, the people like the Emma Vigilant, the Majority Report gang or whatever, they stay in their bubble too. Like they're the different bubble from TYT, but they kind of stay in their own like hoity-toity bubble as well. some of the things Emma said there, it makes sense. But at the same time, let's not sit here and pretend the Democratic Party is for the working people either, because they're not, Emma. That's why they lost. So what they want to do, they still want you to vote for one of those two parties. They don't really want to do anything outside of the two-party system because that's their moneymaker. People can say what they want about me, but this show has gone through a lot. I started this show in 2021 and it has not been easy. And I will tell you, I think the difference is the fact that I'm not going to sit up here and complain to you about the Democrats and then tell you still vote for those Democrats because you might get orange man. I'm not going to complain about the Republicans and say still vote for those Republicans because you see what I mean? That's the difference. They still are keeping you in this two-party system because that's what benefits them. So the anger and frustration that Emma has is because not only did Kamala lose and Emma predicted that she was going to win by a landslide. I don't know how she thought that one. That says something about you. That says something about part of this independent media space that these individuals are not talking to everyday working class people. They're not out on the street. A lot of these people come from money. Emma Vigilant comes from money. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them are millionaires. So if you had been out on the ground like I was talking to people, you would have known that Donald Trump had the best chance to win this election, not Kamala Harris. So I think that there obviously are some changes that are happening. As I said earlier, it's all coming out. I think that TYT has decided to go in a certain direction. That's on them. They're going to do what they want to do and what they feel is best in order for them to continue their brand. I don't know what that means for whatever could have been left of the so-called progressive movement, which no longer exists as far as I can see. But I think that it is unfortunate that what could have been an even bigger movement than what it was at that time, I feel like it was co-opted by greed, pseudo fame, and people trying to build their brands. All right. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you guys so much for the comments. Thank you, Trash Panda. Remember the shared responsibility mandate where you were taxed for not having health insurance? Yep, Obamacare was trash. Thank you, Jay. Hi, Sabby. Remember that neon Sabby Sab sign idea I gave you a while ago? I hope you're still considering it. It would look really cool. I would consider it. I just don't know how to make it or I don't know where to begin. But if you know, let me know. Ashura said the dude is 8 years late. Robbie said some Black Trump voters voted for him out of revenge against Democrat, not Trump supporters. That's true as well. Race Pace says Mondale should be doing his own thing. I agree. Kelly, can't trust this man. He worked for him. Ashura says they're still doing the $100 on their website. I thought that ended. Yeah, it's weird. Thank you, New York. If our agreement has to be absolute, I don't want you in my life either, because it is not who you voted for. It is how you carry yourself. And Simon says, Dear Sabby, have writer Max Porter on your show. He spent time in the West Bank and made a great poetic performance at the Palestine Literature Festival. You can check that out. And thank you, Chris. Sabby, TYT couldn't care less about entertaining independent media. Why? Voices like yours aren't compromised. TYT discovered a long time ago that compromise or selling out is more profitable. Think you got a point there, Chris. Let's get the comments on Rockfin. And it's time for that water love. Water love. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Stephanie. The ladies of The View don't seem to care about due process. Luigi has not been tried yet, let alone convicted. Yet they have found him guilty. That's true. Okay, let's go to part 2, Eric. Hey. Okay, this story is wild. It's all coming out, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think I've spoken about blah, 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 blah. Let's start over. I don't think I've spoken about Romania on this show before, but now something has been brought to my attention. A viewer actually sent me the story, and I think you guys might want to hear this and how it could impact us in the United States. It appears in Romania, there was a Romanian president who was basically right at the cusp of becoming the president of Romania. So, excuse me, candidate here. And apparently, the powers that be do not want him to be president. So, what did they do next? Let's get into this convo here. We're going to get started with this because I think this is important and it concerns me. I wonder if this is going to happen in the United States. Politician on the brink of becoming Romanian president. Listen to this.
So I want to ask you very clearly, did you know about this malign activity? Do you have any links to Russia?
Doesn't exist any relationship with any foreign part or particularly with Russia, as they said. Doesn't exist from my side. My only relationship with the Romanian people. So the Constitutional Court of Romania, I want to be very clear from now, is a mafia court of Romania. Because they cannot accept, and 9 people, because the court is a function of 9 people. 9 people decide for 19 million of people. This is not accept. This does mean coup d'etat, made by the state, which is installed right now in power in Romania.
If a foreign state had tried to influence this election, would you condemn that?
Absolutely, totally.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but are you saying that one of the reasons the Romanian state stopped you was because they were under pressure to prevent a peace deal in Ukraine?
Yes, for sure. They need war and they need to protect their chairs. It's a dictator.
Is this just Romania you're accusing, or a wider NATO, EU?
Look, the pressure from international is huge on that. NATO become from a defense organization an offensive organization, and this cannot be accepted.
Let's pause here and let me explain what's going on. This is very interesting, you guys. So this gentleman, Colin, I guess has been accused of, some type of Russian interference. They're trying to say he had some type of relationship with Russia. Does this sound familiar to you guys? Yeah, it sounds kind of familiar, right? So he is saying that the court itself is corrupt. And he's saying that this has to deal with NATO. He said NATO is supposed to be defensive. They're not really defensive. They're offensive. And he's tired of dealing with all this mess. So because they're saying that Russia basically interfered, the court basically overturned the first round of the election results. And why I thought this story was important is because imagine if that were to happen here. I mean, how many times have you heard election after election, Russia colluded, Russia interfered, they're trying to influence and interfere in our elections? What if it got to the point in this country where the DNC or the RNC actually got together and said, well, I guess it was more likely probably the DNC at this point, but they got together and said, we are going to overturn the primary results because we are saying that there was Russian interference. Now, some of you may remember what they did to Bernie Sanders, how he had won every county in West Virginia and a bunch of other states too, and the DNC decided to give those states to Hillary Clinton. So this is why I say it's not that far off, but we have to pay attention to what's happening here in Romania.
Is your suggestion that Russia should keep the territory that it has already seized in Ukraine?
For me, I don't care what they are dealing. For me, it's important to stop the war. It's not my business what is between them, to be very clear.
I just want to be clear. You're saying that some European leaders and NATO officials came together to put pressure on the Romanian establishment to stop your campaign because they don't want peace.
Exactly. They need war. And
They need war. Everyone write that down. So you see what's happening now? If you come out and say you're for peace and you want the war with Russia and Ukraine to end, you're now labeled, well, he's a politician, so you're now labeled as, oh, you are colluding with Russia, or Russia interfered in your campaign. So does everybody see what's happening here? If you're calling for peace, you are now labeled as a Putin puppet, or you're labeled as colluding with Russia. And what he said is that NATO and the West came together and basically said, we have to stop this guy because he doesn't support the war in Ukraine. He wants peace. Everybody putting all these pieces together. I saw JB said in the chat, he said they would have done this to, they would have done that to Jill Stein. Exactly. So if you call for peace, you're also seen as an enemy.
Looking only for war.
So
the politicians.
Are you convinced that you're going to win tomorrow?
Totally convinced. And for this reason they attack. Because already when the people from abroad, Romanian people, of course, they are starting for voting. And they're starting already, by the way, in the morning of Friday, which does mean yesterday, today is Saturday. Already in the first 4 or 5 hours, I had 80%, more than 80%. And they know in the real time that on Sunday, probably the success will be clarified with more than 80% as percentage.
If you're right and the state is against you, do you expect the police to turn up and put you in prison?
I don't care, because I said very clear, my life is not important in front of the eternity of my people and my country.
So this guy is he could be facing jail time, you guys.
During our conversations, you have referred to George Soros, to a sort of global banking conspiracy. You say that European leaders are trying to thwart peace on behalf of the sort of military. There will be those who say that you are a conspiracy theorist and that you have tapped into a sort of global wave of conspiracy.
Yeah, this is just the propaganda. They know they lost. Yep. And they are desperate. And they are coming with this propaganda. Come on, we discussed about free people. Free man. I am a free man. For this reason I am here. Because I am free until my last piece of blood. So nobody can say anything else. Whatever they want is their problem, or whatever they ask. It's time, arrived the time, for the big shift. This already you can smell in the air. You can see the water. How it moves. You can see everything which is attract the big shift, the big changement. They cannot stop this.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this reminds me when the U.S. government, they were heavily involved in imprisoning Imran Khan in Pakistan. Remember, we found that out later on after that report from Ryan Grimm, that the reason why Imran Khan was put in prison was mainly pushed by NATO and the United States government because Imran Khan was not willing to back the war in Ukraine. He said, no, we want peace. I don't want to get involved in this. So they said, okay, well, we're just going to throw this guy in jail and we'll say, oh, corruption. Let's get him for corruption. How do the people feel about this? Let's bring in this. I want you to hear how the people feel about the elections in Romania.
Romania is now heading into a period of uncertainty following the annulment of last week's presidential elections. The country's constitutional court voided the result of the first round over concerns of foreign interference. The incumbent will remain in his post while the courts and the government find a way to prevent further meddling when the election is held again. DW's Jack Perrick has been speaking to people about the fallout of the ongoing political turmoil.
Mirella Onofray sells flowers on her stand here in downtown Bucharest and is one of millions of people in Romania who voted for the far-right anti-EU pro-Russia candidate in the first round of Romania's now cancelled presidential elections.
Nu avem
We have no money for bills. They've sold everything they could from Romania. They don't want to leave power. They've invented some lies that Russia is behind him. In fact, they are lies because the people know he's a fair man.
Did everybody hear that? So the people, the Romanian people, they know that this accusation of Russian interference is a lie. The voters know.
It was this man, Calin Georgescu, who she hoped would turn the political tides in Romania. He arrived here at a polling station at the weekend in protest. After the second round he'd hoped to contest was cancelled by the Constitutional Court. It cited evidence of meddling on social media channels like TikTok to promote his videos. Georgescu denies Russia was supporting his campaigns. He often says he's fighting for what he calls peasant farmers, people like Petri Tocu, who comes into the city market from the rural countryside north of Bucharest to sell his organic farm produce. But Petri didn't vote for him.
Why? Because he has some very strange things that the ordinary citizen cannot grasp.
Petri says the economic situation in Romania for small businesses is increasingly challenging. There may be many different opinions here in Romania about exactly what happened to see the elections annulled. But the reality is that to some extent, that's going to have to be put aside. The country needs to hold new elections, and they're going to have to find a way to do that. After the cancellation of the election, Romania...
No, hold on one second. I think I have to pull this part out here. What I was going to say is that I think this is the police thing. I just don't want to show the police on here. But what I was going to say, we can bring in this part right here. It is similar to what you see happening in the United States. Like it's too familiar that they're telling these people that like, oh, wait a minute, if you want peace and you want this war to end, then that means that Russia has been interfering in your campaign, that you're colluding with them. And I mean, the thing is, like, if you win the votes, you're supposed to win. Like, how does the court go in and overturn the votes and say, no, we find Russian interference? They didn't find any interference. They just don't want him in because he doesn't support the war. And I'd say the same thing here. You know, same thing in the United States. Like, they don't want people in if they don't support the wars. So the whole thing with Donald Trump winning, that really wasn't supposed to happen. Right. So according to like the military industrial complex, that really wasn't supposed to happen because they want the war to continue in Ukraine because they want to benefit the weapon contractors.
Must work tirelessly to prevent meddling when the elections are held again.
I do not think that the Romanians are so naive to repeat this kind of situation, that we are able to learn from this experience and to have a true democratic debate and free and fair competition.
There is a chance Georgescu will not be permitted to run again. And back on her flower stall, Mirela says that would be proof that her democratic right is being taken away.
When the next elections will be held, I will still vote for Calin Georgescu. Still Calin Georgescu.
Fresh elections are now due to be held here in the Romanian spring as early as March or April.
Well, I guess there's a lot happening on the election front in Europe. We talked about, you know, Macron's mess that he created in France and what they're going through there. And now on top of that, we have the situation in Romania. It's just crazy how they can just go in and just overturn things because they said, no, you don't fit our foreign policy agenda. You don't want to keep the wars going, so we can't have you win. It's wild out here in these streets. Crazy time, folks. And like I told you, it could happen here. That's why I point these things out, you know? All right, let's get to some of the comments. Thank you. Oh, Mondel's here. Sabby, thanks for showing up like you show up. You are welcome. And Antoine said they called the ADOS movement Russian bots to discredit the movement. ADOS, yeah, they did. They did, I know. That's the media for you, corporate media. I'm telling you, fam. All right, guys, we're doing okay on time. I have two more stories for you. I want to get to this Kamala Harris story. It appears that some of the Black staffers from Kamala Harris's campaign have come forward. There have been a couple of interviews that they've had, and they are now, I guess, venting about the conditions that they were under during that campaign, the treatment that they experienced, or should I say the mistreatment that they experienced, and the neglect of trying to recruit the Black community during Kamala's campaign. Now, one of these areas that they heavily focus on during these interviews is Pennsylvania, in particular, Philadelphia, and what happened in Philadelphia. So I just want to go back to refresh your memory, and then we're going to move forward to show you what the problem was in Philadelphia. You may remember this video a while back. Prior to election night, there were a group of Black voters that were supporting Donald Trump, and Alex Wagner was interviewing them. This was one of the videos I showed. There were many, but this was one of the ones I showed from Philadelphia that showed that Kamala Harris was having a difficult time, in particular in that city. Let's just refresh your memory here, and then we'll get into what the staffers had to say.
What are your feelings? And let me start with the women here about Kamala Harris.
She's a woman of color. I'm not putting her down because of that, and I'm not putting her down because she's a woman. I'm not a feminist, so I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, I don't think that she has the personality. I don't think that she has what it takes to go up against Putin and go up against these other presidents that are built for this. I don't want to be scared because my president is scared. I want my president to feel secure and manly and about it.
We brought up gender, right? Like, do you think it matters that she's a woman and people aren't comfortable having a woman in a top leadership role?
No, I don't think that, because most men, they love their mothers. They love their wives. So as a woman, most men, they respect the woman, but she just don't have the qualification or the education to really run America, because she don't have the experience. She don't understand our struggles. And for me to believe you for another 4 years, you're crazy. Right. Like, you're crazy. You're saying the same thing that you said 4 years ago.
So the fact that she's the vice president,
that's
to
just
you
the
is
bottom line.
You're like, you've been here, you've had a chance.
Yes. Well, for me, the very first time I ever heard the name Kamala Harris, it was in association to locking up parents for truancy. That was the first time I ever heard of her name. And I really didn't understand how this person claims to be a Black woman, but yet she's locking up Black women and Black men and separating families.
This is the thing that is, Trump talks about this a lot. He says, you know, Kamala Harris became Black when it was convenient.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about, do you agree with him on that? Do you feel like she's wearing her Blackness?
Absolutely. When she swore into the Senate, it was as the first Indian American.
Thank you.
Which is, it's fine. We don't care.
We all know she's not Black. Let's understand that. We are all clear of that. But my point of view, like I told you earlier, she's already been there. She's in office right now.
So I think we can all, flash back there, a little heated discussion right there of what Kamala Harris was facing in Philadelphia in particular. And I got to tell you, Philly is a tough city. It's not just one of those cities you can show up in and just be like, I'm here, come vote for me. It's tough, similar to Boston, to here in Boston. It's tough. You can't just show up here and just be like, I'm here, come vote for me. Like, you have to prove to the people that you really care about them and you really care about their cause. Now, I showed you that because now we are starting to get more information about what the hell happened in Pennsylvania. So I want to get into this article here, and shout out to Nathan Robinson for this, the current affairs, because this really breaks down some things that happened in Philadelphia. Now, he says how much of Kamala Harris's campaign was a scam. But this gets into how the money was spent, and in particular, Philly. So let's go down here. I'll make this bigger for the people in the back, so you don't got to put on your glasses tonight. Hello. And we are going to start right about here. The New York Times, for instance, has reported that even as Harris' campaign splurged on celebrity-filled events, including paying Oprah's production company $1 million, in Philadelphia, many of the field offices were filthy and lacked basic supplies like tables, chairs, cleaning products, and printers, staff members said. Let's highlight this here. Go away. So this tells you right here that there wasn't effort put into Philadelphia. If people have filthy spaces, if they lack basic supplies, as is quoted in this article by Nathan Robinson, that means that there wasn't effort put there. And part of that could have been for the reason that maybe Kamala's campaign assumed, well, you don't really have to campaign as heavily in the Black communities because they'll see you as one of them. So you ain't really got to get them. You got to go over and try to get those Nikki Haley voters. Remember this? How'd that work out? Remember the whole, I got Liz Cheney a part of my campaign. How did that work out? Did not work out well at all. I think that Kamala Harris found out the hard way that if you ignore the Black base and you don't have a Black agenda, Black people will not come out and support you to help you win this election. She got the lowest amount of support from Black voters when you compare her to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. So let's go on. There's more about Philadelphia here. It also says city campaign staffers being forced to raid the campaign's better stocked suburban offices or to raise money independently. That is when they had field offices, and in many predominantly Black neighborhoods, campaign staff members were operating out of public parks, grocery store parking lots, and church basements. So basically, long story short, it seems like Kamala Harris's campaign treated the staffers, the Black staffers that were in the Philly area, in the city, worse than they treated those that were in the suburbs. So essentially, if we were to compare this to the education system, it's almost like being penalized because of your zip code. So you are going to get under-resourced education because you're in the city versus those that are in the suburbs because they have, more taxes there. So the schools are heavily resourced and funded. So it almost kind of seems like Kamala Harris was playing that game. Well, because you guys are in the urban area, you don't need much. We're going to put all the money into the suburban offices. But she's supposed to be helping out Black people though, right? See what I tell you? What did I tell you? Let's continue. It goes on to say here, that is when they even had the field offices, and in many of the predominantly Black neighborhoods, campaign staff members were operating out of the public parks, grocery store parking lots, and church basements. A volunteer told the Times there were no yard signs, there was no visibility, there were no t-shirts, there was nobody handing out literature, there were no bumper stickers, there was no sign that we were in the fight of our lives in the most important city in a presidential campaign. Even when there were t-shirts, there could be slapdash. One box of them said Harris Waltz. A Get Out the Vote bus tour for Pennsylvania's Black mayors had its funding pulled without explanation. Funding pulled. So this is why. So basically what you're seeing, folks, is Kamala's campaign put less money and resources into the Black community. They didn't feel it was needed for whatever reason, but they put all this money into Texas and Houston for Beyonce to come out there for 3 minutes and say what she had to say and not perform a show. They put all that money into a state that is red, that they knew they couldn't win, but they went cheap when it came to the Black neighborhoods. That lets you know how little they think about us. That lets you know how little the Democratic Party thinks about us. And that is sad. It goes on to say here, the head of the pro-Harris group recounted frantic campaign staff members in Philadelphia, Detroit, and North Carolina, calling him in the final weeks of the race to say that he did not have enough money to provide food or water to volunteers. Now we find out they ain't feeding people. This is how you treat your people. In Georgia, a country party chair said the Harris campaign get out the vote operation had been non-existent, even as he had pleaded for resources. Somebody who was really trying to help, pleading. Black staff members reportedly felt that the Black vote was taken for granted. And when they aired their complaints in a post-election call, Harris' deputy campaign manager told staff members that talking to the press would ruin their career prospects. Highlight this. Now we got blackmail. Blackmail and threats. If you talk to the press, I will make it so that you never work in this town again. Blackmail, threats. So it's not like people didn't want to come forward. So don't blame the staffers. Let's not blame the workers here. Very, very crazy, fam. There appears to have been racism in the allocation of resources, with the campaign deliberately choosing to more heavily fund operations in the white suburbs and neglecting Black urban centers. We're highlighting this one, folks. Heavily fund operations in white suburbs and neglecting Black urban centers. But the Democratic Party, they want to point this out about Donald Trump and the Republican Party when they do the same thing. And I told you, they're sneaky with this because, like I said before, the Republicans are going to be more overt. So if they're racist towards you, it's going to be in your face. It's not going to be hard for you to seek out, basically. But the Democratic Party, they do it in a covert way. None of us knew about this until this article was released. None of us knew that they mistreated the Black staffers in the Black urban neighborhoods until these staffers did interviews. And had they not done these interviews, we would have never known about it. This is the covert way of being racist and discriminatory to other groups. So now you see how the Democratic Party also does this. I told you, even liberals will prioritize white people over Black people. Do not be fooled. Let's continue. Perhaps on the theory that the Democrats had already successfully appeased Black voters by selecting a Black woman. Here we go. Organizers said they were told not to engage in the bread and butter task of getting out the vote in Black and Latino neighborhoods, and instead were turned into glorified telemarketers, not to engage. Again, that's how little they think about you. They were told not to engage with you. But keep telling me they're going to do something for Black people. Keep telling me that they're going to help out the Black community. They didn't want to engage with you. Goes on to say, as a result, Harris staffers resorted to going rogue and setting up their own unauthorized operations in a desperate attempt to get out the Black vote. So they went on their own to get Black people to come out and vote. This is insane. This is crazy, people. As operations targeting Black voters were starved, the Harris campaign spent lavishly on other things, paying for an avalanche of advertising, social media influences, and a for-hire door-knocking operation. Thousands of staff, pricey rallies, a splashy Oprah town hall, celebrity concerts, and even drone shows. They spent roughly twice as much as Trump in the final days of the race. Harris ally Bakari Sellers comments that we had so much money, it was hard to get it out the door. Not that they didn't try. And the Times reports that a bevy of consultants, allies, and others were often angling for a cut. Some of them seem to have succeeded, and 4 companies received at least $90 million in payments as of mid-October. And we've gone through some of the receipts before, you guys. We went through the Roland Martin receipts on the show before already. And we also talked about Al Sharpton's payment as well. So this part right here Some of this seems to have been simply bad decision making. Harris made the same error that Hillary Clinton did in 2016. What did I tell you? What did I say? I called it from the jump. I said Kamala Harris is making the same mistakes as Hillary Clinton, which tells me that they weren't really trying to win, like win, right? It was a lot of hype. So Nathan Robinson goes on to say, deploying resources in states like Texas that she clearly was not going to win, that could have instead been used in states she desperately needed to win. We spent money in stupid ways because we had a really bad strategy. That's a former DNC consultant said to Puck. They even bought an expensive TV ad in Florida, a state Harris knew she wouldn't win, just to troll Donald Trump. Other aspects makes Harris makes Harris campaign look like little more than a multi-level marketing scheme. For instance, they spent $111 million on online ads seeking donations. In other words, ads asking for money to pay for more ads asking for money. I was struck over this campaign season by how many texts I got just pleading with me urgently to send more money. I never did, even though I did not want Trump to win the election, because I had zero confidence that the money would actually end up being spent on anything useful. Turns out this lack of confidence was fully justified because your donation might well have gone to a drone show production company or Oprah's staff, or to a pointlessly build a set for a podcast, which reportedly cost $100,000, yet had cardboard walls, raising the question of who got the money, or just towards sending you even more texts. What it did not go toward, apparently, was adequately funding field offices of Black neighborhoods. Now, over the past couple of months, a number of pundits told you, how dare you not support this Black woman? A number of pundits told you, don't you dare question her anything about her loyalty to the Black community, when you had questions about her record in California, when you had questions about the truancy, when you had questions about her locking up all those Black men over marijuana in California. They said, don't you dare question this Black woman. How dare you question Kamala Harris? The Democratic Party didn't even go through a primary. They selected this woman and said, here she is. She's out in front of you. We are going to make it happen with her. She didn't get far in 2020. The Democratic Party feels like they owe Kamala Harris something. And it's very obvious. Now they're trying to prop up this same woman to run for governor of California. Now, I don't know how many times I can say this, but if you spend a career locking up Black men for marijuana, locking up Black parents for truancy, thus adding to the school to prison pipeline, you spend your time locking more Black people up than you do actually going into the community and talking to Black people. I'm calling you suspect, and I'll be damned if I tell anyone in my community to come out and support you. Not happening over here. After the way that she treated Black staffers that were part of her campaign and the way that she ignored Black urban communities, they want this woman to also be governor of California because they feel like they have to make her a something. And by they, I mean the Clintons, the Obamas, the Democrat leadership, that Democrat machine. This is not owed to Kamala Harris. And she showed Black people just how little she thought about you by ignoring you. Out of all the states to not mess around with, Pennsylvania, she chose to ignore the very base population that she needed in order to win that state. Just think about it. If these interviews didn't happen, we would not know about this. But they made a lot of money. They raised a lot of money. Imagine if all that money went to mutual aid. Imagine if that money went to helping fix some of those Black neighborhoods that need it, that need the infrastructure. Imagine if all those billions of dollars that she raised went into Black communities and helped those communities. What a mess. But with over $1 billion being spent in over 100 days and staff hurrying to get the money out the door, the existing reporting suggests that a shocking amount may have been squandered. We went over her disadvantages before, etc. We've gone through all of that. And I think I wanted to go to the last part here. Let's highlight this part from Nathan Robinson. He said, all they know how to do is demand money and spend it on nonsense, like a big light up sphere or a concert with celebrities. It's not a quite scam on the level of Bernie Madoff or the crypto industry, but it is certainly a kind of fraud because it relies on convincing good people to part with their money, thinking they are paying for one kind of thing when they may in fact be paying for something they wouldn't want to fund if they understood where the money goes. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why I don't donate to campaigns. The last campaign that I donated to was Bernie 2020. And after that, I said, I'm good. No, thank you. I'm good. Nathan ends with, it's deceptive and wrong. And I suspect we haven't heard the last of the damning reports about how spectacularly this campaign failed. Again, how much of the Harris campaign was a scam? Really sad the way the black staffers were treated. And then I go back to that comment from Barack Obama where he said, the problem is with you brothers. No, the problem was with you guys not really wanting to care about the black community. Ay. Let's go to some of the comments here. We have one more story for you tonight, guys. Shout out to Joey Peltier, who's been a member for 17 months, says hashtag free Leonard Peltier. That's right. And thank you, VS Need. BJG and Jink on BF 3 times. Jink denied her on TYT. Thank you, Trenton. Jennifer Lewis said, sister girl Kamala would have taken care of us, though. Jennifer be on some stuff sometimes. Like Jennifer in her own mind sometimes. And Bryce said, should hear Jennifer Legliff Lewis say similar things, Sabby, on Stephen A. Pod. What's wild, she grew up in Kinloch in St. Louis. Very poor neighborhood. Interesting. I didn't know that. Well. All right, guys, we are now in the final stretch. I have one more story for you. I think it'll make you laugh. I think it's pretty humorous. And I think Bree did a really good job. I don't think they were ready for her. And I think she held her own. Like I said, folks, it's all coming out. And there's something here that's also going to be exposed during this debate. Is it really about policy or is it about party? Are you going to defend the policy regardless of what party it's under? That is something that is exposed here in this debate with Briahna Joy Gray on Piers Morgan's show about the healthcare system. Let's go ahead and dive in. It is a fiery moment.
But I think the real point is that both sides of the establishment political aisle are desperate to make this a conversation about something other than the fact that we have perhaps the most perverse healthcare system, or insurance system is a more accurate way to put it, compared to every other similarly wealthy country in the world. The reason you're seeing this outrage and sometimes kind of performative thirsting for the shooter is exactly because 68,000 people every year in the United States of America die because people like Brian Thompson, who run companies like United Healthcare, deny insurance claims that could have saved the lives of their loved ones. And while there were a lot of words spent talking about the fear, the real fear of the people on the subway who had encountered Jordan Neely, it's important to note that Jordan Neely hadn't physically engaged with anybody on the subway.
Well, I'm going to come to Jordan, just to be clear. I'm going to come to...
Wait a minute.
Let's separate the two stories, though.
That was just an aside. So much such words, passions, empathy was directed in that direction. But Brian Thompson's actual crimes of having a direct connection to mass death and suffering for tens of thousands of Americans on a yearly basis.
Well, hang on, you said
I
crimes.
think it's going under-examined.
Okay, you said crimes. What was
denying?
what was the crime?
Unfortunately, the United States, our legal system is designed by people in power who enrich themselves, who don't make denying people's health care that results in mass death.
Yeah, but you called it a crime, though. You called it a crime, but it wasn't a crime. He wasn't a convicted criminal.
I would define it colloquially as a crime, and the fact that Luigi allegedly took matters into his own hands is because no political system or legal system in the United States of America has been willing to step up.
Actually, we don't even know that, do we?
The mass murder that's been executed on the part of the American healthcare system.
I would say, look.
Let me pause here, and to Bree's point, I just want to remind everybody about the Sackler family. And the opioid crisis in this country, how they were able to continue to sell and prescribe and continue to produce Oxycontin, even though there were people who were dying, there were people who were having like serious complications from the medicine, and they continued to push it on the doctors and tell the doctors if they're still having pain to increase the dose. This is something that I feel more people should talk about it, but it definitely affected the Rust Belt area because they targeted a lot of these rural communities that had jobs that required physical strain, such as like lumber yards or the coal mines, etc. And the Sackler family, basically just got like a slap on the wrist. Richard Sackler should be in jail. He should not be living somewhere down in Florida trying to mind his own damn business after all those people that he killed. Don't forget the Sackler family bribed the FDA to say that the label warning was okay so that the drug could get through. This wasn't the first time. The Sackler family, going back before Richard, don't forget his father was also doing this. They've been pushing drugs and these type of prescriptions onto the American people, and they made a fortune out of it, and none of them went to jail for it. So to Bree's point, when she tells Piers it was a crime, it is a crime. The fact that Brian Thompson and all these healthcare CEOs continue to allow American people to die, just like the Sackler family did, I do consider it to be a crime. You're talking about the U.S. biggest criminal here. Look at what they do to these people. But Brian Thompson lives very well. He was living very well. He had great money. And for all the people who continue to say, oh my God, but people lost their father. The wife lost a husband. From what I read, they were separated, number one. And number two, make sure you have that same empathy when people are killed by the police. Make sure you have that same empathy when unarmed black men are killed by the police, okay? Because some of the same people who out here crying their eyes out for Brian Thompson, a rich man who gave zero fucks about people dying who couldn't afford to pay to have surgeries or treatment. Make sure you have that same empathy for unarmed black men that are killed by the damn police.
We don't know really enough about this guy yet. It looks to me like he's a bit of a narcissist.
What do you mean?
I think he was a narcissist. I think that he was clearly unhinged. I'm not sure that he's the great Robin Hood. Hang on.
Wait, which guy? I'm sorry.
Hang on.
Luigi,
the shooter,
or,
right?
Brian Thompson.
The one who shot Brian Thompson, Luigi, right? I'm just not sure that he's this great, heroic guy standing up against the healthcare system. I suspect
I'm not talking about that. This isn't about Luigi, who may or may not, he's been arrested, he's been charged. We may or may not know that he's the actual shooter. I'm talking about the public reaction to Brian Thompson's death.
No, I understand that.
We do know about Brian Thompson.
I understand that.
We know about United Healthcare, and that's the root of the discontent. That's the root of the public outcry. Luigi is just a vessel through which people are expressing their deep frustrations with the American healthcare system. So the question is, if you don't want murders like this to be happening, assassinations to be happening like this in the street, and I'm someone who does not believe in the death penalty, guilty and don't condone these kinds of vigilante instances of violence in either case. But if you want to get to the root of why people are so deeply unhappy, you have to, it resonates so deeply with people that this has happened, you have to get to the root of why there is this deep well of tragedy, despair, and outrage in the United States of America. And that has to do with what Brian Thompson has chosen to do with his life, and what companies like United Healthcare have chosen to do to the American people.
But just to be clear, before I go to Natalie to respond to that, do you feel any empathy for Brian Thompson and his family?
I have infinite empathy for any individual as a person in their personal capacity. As his role as the CEO of United Healthcare, I'm afraid I'm with the overwhelming majority, bipartisan majority of the American people who say, I'm saving my empathy for people who are much more vulnerable, and have caused a lot.
Right. So to be clear, you don't have any empathy for him after he was executed.
Notice how Piers Morgan always wants people to have empathy for those that are in power. He wanted you to have empathy for Israel, who's in power. Do you condemn Hamas? And now he wants you to have empathy for Brian Thompson, who was in a position of power. Why doesn't Piers Morgan have that empathy for the people that are stomped on by those powerful figures? It's just something that I've noticed. That's all.
I personally don't.
Right. Okay. Well, at least you're honest. Let me go to Natalie Winters. I mean, I find this staggering. You've got to remember, the left is supposed to be the party that cares so much. All of them have their Be Kind hashtags. They're the caring ones, the kind ones. And they can't even bring it in their hearts to say they find a shred of empathy for a man who's just been executed, who's the father of children, the husband of a loving wife, and so on. I find that just staggering, that you can't, on a human level, have empathy for the murder of someone, but also make your point about the system in which he was an executive. What's your response?
I mean, it's absolutely shocking. And look, what it gets to the core of is the continued dehumanization of people, because in the sort of culturally Marxist paradigm of oppressor versus oppressed, you're allowed to do whatever you want to someone who has allegedly, or in this case, I'm not a supporter of the United States healthcare system or apparatus. Believe me, there's so many problems that need to be fixed and adjusted there. But condoning, which is in effect what these two panelists are doing, the assassination of him by a roundabout way by saying, well, the healthcare system is, you just told me that you had absolutely no empathy and that you think what people are doing by gunning down healthcare executives because of bad decisions. And by the way,
I do not condone vigilante violence in either instance. So don't misrepresent my view. If you can make your case without telling a lie, miss, then you should do it.
Oh my God. So I don't think that she was ready. I think her name is Natalie. Was she ready? I don't think she was ready. She wasn't ready. Can we all say Natalie wasn't ready? Because Bree said miss.
Just for the 68 million Americans and their families who are killed every single year by the policies of the United Healthcare system.
Don't talk over each other. We can't hear you. Okay, look, listen, Briahna, I'll let you speak, Briahna. Let Natalie have her say, and then I'll let people respond.
By the way, if you think Luigi Mangione is someone who you maybe have empathy or sympathy for, this is someone who had a very privileged upbringing, background, very wealthy family. The CEO of United Healthcare is someone who came from a working class family, went to state schools, didn't go to the University of Pennsylvania. Like I said, I'm not defending the healthcare system writ large, but to say that you don't have empathy because you view him as an oppressor of the American people is a perversion, not just of the system of law and justice in this country, but that's extreme. You just said you don't have empathy for a man who was murdered in cold blood on the streets of New York. So what do you have for him?
You are
Sympathy?
obsessed with this oppressed language. It seems to be a bit of a kink.
You are so much so that you just said you don't have empathy for a murder victim.
I said, let me be clear. I said, as a person, interpersonally, of course, he has a family, and those people are feeling grief, and those people, as far as I know, are innocent in all of this. But the question is, here's the real question. Why are we asking random pundits, who might personally have been victimized, by the way, by someone like Brian Thompson, why they would have empathy for him and their family, while there's no question being asked about who has empathy for the tens of thousands of Americans who are killed every year by the policies that Brian Thompson has made millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars off of. Why are we talking about the fact that this 25-year-old, 26-year-old alleged perpetrator perpetrator went to an Ivy League school when obviously he was so still financially precarious, or obviously we don't know, the facts will come out. But the fact that someone who is relatively privileged in the United States of America can still feel so overwhelmed by our healthcare system that they would go to these lengths, that people who are relatively affluent still find themselves in medical bankruptcy, as you so rightly pointed out earlier, Piers Morgan, that 50% of families that have a cancer diagnosis in their family in the United States of America go bankrupt. That is where the moral outrage should lie. But when you go on elite programs, no offense, Piers, who have wealthy, affluent hosts, the focus seems to be on the family of the millionaire and not on the families of the people who have been terrorized by the healthcare system.
You made your point.
We're going to drop a beat for Bree because she went all the way in there. She brought it right back to the core issue, which is, where is the same sympathy and focus for the people who have been affected, who have been victims of this decrepit healthcare system? And I want to remind everybody, Piers Morgan lives in a country where everybody has healthcare. So Piers, you can fall all the way back. We're going to drop a beat there for B. We're going to drop it. Here it comes. Let's go. Hey. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat. Feel the heat. All right. Let's get back into it, ladies and gentlemen. We had to do that one. We had to do it. Let's get back in.
Listen, I'm in London at the moment. In the UK, we have the National Health Service. It's free healthcare for all. You know, so I find the whole system in America completely baffling. That a country of your size and power and economic muscle can't have a better system where people don't fall through the cracks in such large numbers. I completely agree. But that is a separate issue to the execution of someone in the street. Clay, I could see you were rolling your eyes there.
But it's not a separate issue.
Well, let me bring Clay in.
It is a separate. Piers, I'm in Israel right now. I just been touring a lot of the kibbutzes where there were people who were murdered because they were Jewish. I can't help but see the analogy here. You can be upset with a larger societal issue. It does not justify murdering people because of it. And if you are making that argument, and Briahna is making that argument, I'm sorry, her brain is broken, because what she is saying is, I'm so upset about the healthcare system that I believe that assassinating an innocent person who has never been convicted of any crime in cold blood on the streets of Manhattan is okay. Then your brain is broken. If you don't.
Of course, he's in Israel, guys. He's in Israel, and he cares more about Brian Thompson being killed in New York than he does about all those Palestinian kids that have been killed in Gaza. You see how people really expose themselves? This man is sitting, who looks kind of like Max Kellerman, who used to be a part of First Take. I don't know if everybody watched the show First Take. Stephen A. Smith used to be a part of First Take, and it was him and Max Kellerman. I'm not sure if Stephen A. is still there. Anyway, long story short, he kind of looks like a bootleg Max Kellerman. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. Do you see how people who don't have any sympathy for the Palestinians that have been killed and continue to defend Israel, like him and Piers Morgan, notice how they have all this sympathy for Brian Thompson, one person who's responsible for all those deaths of people, denying their insurance while getting wealthy himself, I might add. But he doesn't seem to have that same type of empathy for all the Americans that died because they didn't have the health care insurance, or the insurance wouldn't cover their treatment.
Don't have empathy.
That's
for
not what I'm saying, and the audience is intelligent enough to have heard what I've actually said.
You said you didn't have empathy for the killing of a man because you were upset about the larger societal issue of healthcare. That is not any different
that he is a person
than
in
you
private
saying
capacity.
when you are
I do
seeing
not have
what happens
for
when
the
someone is killed because they're Jewish, that you're
and
not
by
happy
the
about
way,
the situation here.
Neither
It's
do millions of Americans who've been victimized by Brian
a
themselves.
larger societal issue that you don't like. And by the way, this is not a healthcare debate.
Yeah, I want to play. I want to play two.
I want to play
two. It is a healthcare debate.
Hang on. I want to play.
It is a healthcare
hang
debate.
on, Briahna.
It's a murder debate.
Yeah, it's a
murder debate,
I
not
agree.
a healthcare debate.
People are not excited about. Wait a minute. People are not excited about murder. There are thousands of murders that happen. Well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds, whatever, dozens of murders that happen every day in the United States of America. And those perpetrators are not being celebrated by the public. The public right now is feeling empathy for Luigi. They are feeling some kind of catharsis, schadenfreude, whatever you want to call it.
So you're feeling empathy for an executioner, but not the person he executed.
He's a cold-blooded assassin. No one should be feeling empathy for him. He's
the same way you guys feel. You guys feel empathy for Netanyahu. Piers Morgan, you feel empathy for what happens to people in Israel. Oh God, they brutally butchered 1,200 people, which the number kept changing over and over again, but you'll never hear them say brutally butchered those Palestinians. All those women and children. Piers Morgan and fake Max Kellerman, these two guys have more sympathy and energy for Brian Thompson than they do for the kids, the babies that have been ripped apart in Gaza. They don't have empathy for them. They got more empathy for this rich ass white dude that was walking down the street who made a living out of killing people. They got more empathy for him than they do for those babies that were killed in Gaza. You tell me if it makes sense to you.
rich kid with a broken brain,
Totally agree.
probably like you.
Okay, I want to play two clips now. I want to play, first of all, a mashup of the reaction to our Taylor Lorenz Joy clip, which is...
I think this is a big thing that you see a lot of times too. Like he said that Briahna has a broken brain. So you can agree, you may agree or disagree with Bree on certain things, but Bree is a Harvard educated lawyer. Like, let's not sit here and try to downplay. You know what I mean? Let's not sit here and try to downplay that.
Very big in America. Let's watch this.
That is this ideology. She has joy for a guy getting murdered in the streets of New York.
I just feel like saying that you feel joy over someone getting assassinated, like even if you do feel that way, I just don't think it's helpful to say that.
She in her mind is like, a man that worked for a company at the highest levels died, so she feels joy. Okay.
And now this woman is all over online on her Substack and elsewhere trying to justify this man's murder, and goes on with Piers Morgan on his YouTube show last night.
Wow, we have a real problem in this country. The left has a real problem.
But there, all these people, not all of them, most of these people supported everything that Israel was doing, by the way.
Is something deeper, a sickness that is going on in our political class, best exemplified by the absolute nut job, Taylor Lorenz, who used to work for the Washington Post. She appeared on Piers Morgan yesterday, and she said that she felt actual joy when the United Healthcare CEO was murdered on the street.
Now, John, before I come to you, I want to play Joe Rogan, who interestingly had this take.
I don't think this guy was a professional. I think this guy, if I had to guess, some guy who got fucked over. Apparently that company is really bad on denying claims.
34% denial rate.
And normal's
like
like 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those guys.
I don't think anybody's going to like be crying too hard over that guy.
Yeah, maybe his family, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It's a dirty, dirty business. The business of insurance is fucking gross.
No, Joe, I mean, it's interesting there. Joe Rogan, he didn't come out and say he felt joyful, but certainly no great tears being shed, no great expression of sympathy. As Briahna, I mean, I wouldn't have phrased it the way she did. And I think to admit you have no empathy for someone when they've been murdered is very bizarre.
Joe Rogan and I had the same take.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm about to make the
Joe
point.
Rogan and I had the exact
Allow
same
me
take.
to conduct.
They did. And this is something I want to point out. Is it really about policies or is it about party? Because why doesn't fake Max Kellerman have that same criticism towards what Joe Rogan just said? Why doesn't he say that Joe Rogan's brain is broken? Oh, no, we can't go there because Joe Rogan endorsed and supported Donald Trump. So is it really about the policies, ladies and gentlemen? Is it about policy and principle? Or is it about backing and supporting the party or the political ideology, no matter what cost, even if it's wrong? So this was a really revealing moment. So I'm glad that Piers did show that Joe Rogan clip, because it goes to show you the number of times you heard them say the left has lost it, the left this, the left that. Joe Rogan said the same thing that Briahna Joy Gray said. So is his brain broken too?
My own interviews, Briahna, if you don't mind, which I mean, there's not a massive amount of difference in response there. So is there a point here that the issue of healthcare in America is angering so many Americans because of these denial rates and so on, that this was almost an inevitable conclusion to this, that somebody at some stage was going to turn violent?
Yeah, and let me respond to Clay, your question, and also the clips. First and foremost, I for one have said that I'm against vigilante violence. I have the capacity to feel empathy for unarmed individuals who get killed. What I find fascinating about the framing is, where is the pearl clutching? Where is the outrage? It seems very selective, right? So if you're in Israel, Clay, I'm glad you're there. Talk to everyone. Go visit the West Bank and talk to Palestinians if you truly want to have empathy. When we talk about framing, right, I think Clay said, just because you're angry about a system doesn't give you the right to commit vigilante violence. I agree. Just because you're angry and you think that Donald Trump won the 2020 election that he lost, it does not give you the right to be part of an incited violent insurrection where you hurt and harm Capitol Police, take a shit in the U.S. Capitol. Some people come armed to assassinate people. By the way, just over the weekend, Donald Trump said he would pardon those people, traitors, violent insurrectionists whom he called hostages. I see no condemnation. I see celebration from the right. Another story about murder, how common it is. Another Daniel Perry, a white man, a veteran. He was convicted, Piers, just a couple of months ago. He was convicted by a jury of our peers for killing an unarmed white man who was attending a BLM rally with his black girlfriend. Governor Abbott of Texas, do you know what happened? The story no one talks about. Governor Abbott of Texas pardoned this man who was convicted by a jury for killing an unarmed white man. MAGA celebrates it. So when do we celebrate and when do we not? And right now, to go to your question, this comment that Joe said and what Briahna said and what I said is the reaction to the murder of Brian Thompson is what I'm fascinated about. It is inevitable, I believe, to answer your question directly, in a country, the most powerful, wealthy country on earth, right? That where we pay more money than any other country for healthcare, where so many people, so many adults, their number one debt, Piers, is medical debt. I had a daughter who is a stage 4 cancer survivor. She 5 years on, she's cancer free, full liver transplant, she's a little diva. A person like myself, Piers, the only reason I had insurance is through my wife, who's a doctor. We're pretty privileged compared to most people. If I wasn't able to get help from my family and friends, I would be in debt. I would be $200,000 in debt. Piers, I had to do a GoFundMe, and that's me, a person with relative privilege. So look at the reaction right now. And I keep telling people, for CEOs, I mean this sincerely, if you are in healthcare, if you're a billionaire, if you are a CEO, if you're a 1%, look at the bipartisan rage from Briahna to Joe Rogan about the healthcare system, where, millions of Americans, Piers, I don't think they're evil. I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I know deeply empathetic people who looked at this murder and said, I feel bad for Brian, but you know what? United Healthcare screwed over a lot of people.
Okay.
I have a story.
Okay.
And the system has to change.
Well, listen, I think the system has got to change. I totally agree with that. Let me bring
and let me just say something else here too, to Piers. Like I said, you live in the UK. You guys have nationalized healthcare system. You can go to the hospital and not have to stress. Not to mention you have paid maternity leave too. So you guys you can go to the hospital and not have to worry about if you're going to break the bank afterwards. So until you have that lived experience, please don't try to tell us about the healthcare issue, because you don't have to deal with that. We'll go on a little bit more here.
Actually, I want to pivot to Daniel Penny now, because it really has been a tale of two vigilante stories.
Oh, no more Daniel. I'm sorry. I forgot we go into the Daniel Penny part. I can't hear the Daniel Penny anymore. We've talked about that enough. I've heard about it enough there. I think we're actually going to go ahead and stop right there. I think that's pretty good enough. But guys, when you get a chance, please go watch the entire segment of this. I mean, I actually watched Briahna Joy Briahna Joy Gray's discussion or debate with Glenn Greenwald earlier today too. I saw that one, and that was also I came in during the part about Daniel Penny, and I saw another discussion about Daniel Penny earlier today. So I just need a little break from the Daniel Pennies. But anyway, check that one out too. That was really good. I think Bree won that debate. Some people think that Glenn did, but you guys watch it and let me know. Or if you did watch it, how do you know? You know, what do you think? Or who do you think won that debate? Just a quick reminder, I will not be live tomorrow night because I do have the mutual aid event this weekend. And I do just want to thank all of you guys. Thank you so much for donating to the event. We got all the, actually Kate went out and got all the toys and the games for the kids. So this weekend we will be in Roxbury and we'll be donating the gifts to the families that signed up. And we'll also have games for the kids as well. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much. That really does mean a lot to us. And you did the damn thing. So that is my last mutual aid event this year. So we won't start mutual aid again until 2025, probably towards maybe April-ish. I don't know. I have to double check the dates. The problem with living in New England, particularly in Massachusetts, is that we have long winters and it's really hard sometimes to get people to come out during the winter. I kid you not. I'll do it, but it's hard to get people to come out during the winter. So when we do these mutual aid events, we try to do them, when the weather is not crazy. February can be very, very cold, probably the coldest month. And then of course, January. Yeah. But March here is still winter. So here in March, it still snows. But thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate all of that. Let me go to the comments here. Thank you, baby Ethernet. Snatched by Bree. We appreciate you. Boo. Thank you, Gamble. The crime is the careless abandonment of excessive insurance, premium paying Americans to the morgue at the speed of an Amazon conveyor belt. Yeah. Thank you, New York Varsity. When the subject of Israel came up, that dude in the middle left beforehand. Is it because he thought Bree was going to cook him? I don't know. Sometimes people drop from the segments and then they come back. I don't know. It could be a connection thing. Thank you, Yantra. So this is finally what it starts looking like when the left in America starts kicking ass in public media. Thank you, Yantra. And thank you, Got Milk. Remember how MAGA people chanted Genocide Joe, but then laugh when Trump accuses others of being Palestinian lovers? Epic white supreme hypocrisy. So that brings up my question again. Is it about policy or is it about party? Because if it's about policy, then we can leave these parties. Something to think about, folks. That's why I continue to say that. Let's get those comments on Rockfin, Eric, and then we'll head out. Hey, hey, hey. Thank you, Roger. How many y'all remember when MSNBC tried to discredit Bernie's young girl base, saying young millennial girls are going to Bernie rallies to meet boys? I remember that. Don't talk and have a conversation about healthcare. This is a tactic by Whoopi and people like her to keep us talking and talking and talking and talking, but never coming to the solution. We already talked and know the solution. Ballot measure 2026, enough said. And thank you for this one as well, Roger. Of course, she's filled with joy. That's what her name is. Duh. Who hired these people on TV? Ay, ay, ay. All right, guys, that's tonight's show. As I told you, it all came out, or at least I think it all came out. There'll be clips for the next couple of days. I'll be back live again Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, have a good night and keep up the fight.